Chapter 1942. Actually, exchanging the soul stone for the departed spirit flower was purely to test the black-clothed youth. He wanted to see if this person would be tempted by his wealth after seeing that he had the soul stone and a spatial divine item. But he didn't. It seemed like the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace were of good quality. However, as time passed, the black-clothed youth still hadn't appeared. This made Qin Feiyang irritated. Was he fooled? The night deepened. Whoosh! Finally. Accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, two figures arrived at lightning speed. Qin Feiyang focused his gaze. Who else could it be but the black-clothed youth? It seems like I was overthinking. Qin Feiyang smiled and looked at the other youth. The youth was about 1.8 meters tall and was also dressed in black. There was also a fire lotus tattoo on his chest. His appearance was extraordinary. His temperament was also outstanding. His aura had also reached the level of a high-level war god. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Gao Xiaowei appeared. He said, "Take a look, is he your big brother?" Gao Xiaowei raised her head and was pleasantly surprised. "It's him." She immediately soared into the sky and flew towards Gao Xiaolong. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and followed behind Gao Xiaowei. There's another woman?" The black-clothed youth looked at Qin Feiyang and then at Gao Xiaowei. He was slightly stunned. The four of them met in the sky. The black-clothed youth cupped his hands and apologized. "Brother, sorry for making you wait." "It's fine." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. As for Gao Xiaowei, she threw herself into Gao Xiaolong's arms and cried. However, Gao Xiaolong's expression was one of shock and confusion. He glanced at the black-clothed youth beside him from time to time as if he was asking for help. "Wait. Something's wrong." Qin Feiyang looked at Gao Xiaolong's expression and a light flashed in the depths of his eyes. One must know. Gao Xiaolong and Gao Xiaowei were biological siblings. Shouldn't the elder brother be happy to see his biological sister come looking for him? But why did he reveal such an expression now? Moreover, when they met, he didn't even say a word of concern or inquiry. Something was very wrong. This Gao Xiaolong is acting as if he doesn't know Gao Xiaowei. The young man in black looked at Gao Xiaowei and then looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. "Brother, who is this girl?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. This Gao Xiaolong didn't react at all. What did this mean? This proved that this person wasn't Gao Xiaolong. Otherwise, how could he not recognize his own sister? Alas. Seems like the people from Nine Heavens Palace aren't anything good. Qin Feiyang sighed, his heart filled with disappointment. He had thought that Zhang Xian was a decent person, but who could have thought that he would be able to conceal his strength so well? Qin Feiyang looked at Gao Xiaolong, smiling without batting an eyelid. "You're Gao Xiaolong?" "It's me." Gao Xiaolong nodded. Qin Feiyang said, "Then who is the girl in your arms? Do you know?" Gao Xiaolong lowered his head to look at Gao Xiaowei, the confusion in his eyes deepened. Gao Xiaowei raised her head to look at Gao Xiaolong, anxiously saying, "Big brother, I'm Xiaowei don't you recognize me?" Gao Xiaolong was stunned for a second, but he quickly smiled. "Xiaowei of course I recognize you. I was just joking with you, don't be angry." Looking at Gao Xiaolong's reaction, Qin Feiyang already had an idea. This person was definitely not Gao Xiaolong. But these two people, pretending to be Gao Xiaolong, what were they trying to do? Wait a minute. Could it be? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but sigh in his heart. There was no knowing what was in a person's heart. This saying was indeed true. No matter where he went, he couldn't easily trust anyone. But Gao Xiaowei didn't suspect anything. She wept bitterly as she said to Gao Xiaolong, "Big brother, grandfather, father, mother, and our clansmen, they're all dead." "What?" Gao Xiaolong's face changed, asking, "Who did it?" "Gua family." Gao Xiaowei said, her eyes filled with hatred. This Guo family really deserves to die. Gao Xiaolong was filled with grief and indignation, but he quickly comforted her with a gentle voice. Shall we? Don't be sad, Big Brother will definitely avenge them. And let's go find the Guo family for revenge now. Gao Xiaohui said. Now? Gao Xiaolong was stunned. He glanced at the black-robed young man beside him. The black-robed young man's eyes turned, looking at Gao Xiaohui, smiling. Shall we? The matter of revenge can't be rushed, it must be prepared in advance. How about this, we'll first bring you to Sky Dragon City to settle down, then we can slowly plan. But, Gao Xiaohui was anxious. Gao Xiaolong said, Xiaohui, listen to us, it won't be wrong. All right. Gao Xiaohui looked at Gao Xiaolong, then at the black-robed young man, nodding her head. Watching the two of them singing the same tune, Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed, I really can't watch this anymore. The black-robed young man and Gao Xiaolong were stunned, looking suspiciously at Qin Feiyang. I'll bring you to a place. Qin Feiyang smiled, and with a wave of his hand, the four of them disappeared without a trace. Black Tortoise World. Above the herb field. Qin Feiyang stood facing the wind. Gao Xiaohui was still standing beside Gao Xiaolong. Whereas the black-robed young man and Gao Xiaolong were looking around in amazement. This is that spatial artifact. It's too big. Especially when they saw the herb field below, both of them were dumbfounded. The fire lotus had been in the herb field's courtyard all this time. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear, the black-robed young man took a step forward, landing in front of Qin Feiyang, smiling as he asked, Did you find Gao Xiaolong? Qin Feiyang nodded, adding, It's just an impostor, it's him. Qin Feiyang did not transmit his voice, nor did he conceal his identity, directly pointing at Gao Xiaolong. Impostor? The fire lotus was dumbfounded. Gao Xiaohui also heard it, looking at Qin Feiyang in astonishment, then turned to look at Gao Xiaolong beside her. At the same time, hearing the word impostor, Gao Xiaolong and the black-robed young man shuddered, looking at Qin Feiyang in unison, asking, Brother, what do you mean? Originally, I wanted to let you two continue acting, but your acting is too bad. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Gao Xiaolong was furious. Brother, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't speak whatever you want. I am Gao Xiaolong. Yes, he's my big brother. Gao Xiaohui also looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, Miss Xiaohui, I really don't know if you're really innocent or just pretending to be innocent. There were so many flaws, but you didn't see through them. Qin Feiyang was speechless. What flaws? Gao Xiaohui was suspicious. First of all, this Gao Xiaolong didn't call you sister when he saw you. Secondly, the two of them kept exchanging flirtatious glances. Lastly, when he heard that your Gao family was annihilated by the Guo family, this Gao Xiaolong actually didn't go back to the Guo family to seek revenge. Think about it, if it was anyone else who heard such bad news, they would go crazy. But this person was able to calm down immediately. If you still don't believe me, you can ask him a few questions, I guarantee that he won't be able to answer. Qin Feiyang laughed. Gao Xiaolong and the black-robed young man's expression revealed a trace of panic. Hearing this, Gao Xiaohui turned to look at Gao Xiaolong, muttering to herself, All right, big brother, let me ask you a question. When we were young, what did you call me? Of course it was little sister. Gao Xiaolong said. Wrong. When we were young, you never called me little sister, you always called me smelly girl. You're really a fake. Who are you? Why are you pretending to be my big brother? Gao Xiaohui said angrily. The panic on Gao Xiaolong's face could no longer be concealed. Do it. At the same time, the black-robed young man's face darkened, and he pounced towards Qin Feiyang. Gao Xiaolong also reached out to grab Gao Xiaohui. Gao Xiaohui retreated in a panic. However, the fire lotus suddenly landed in front of Gao Xiaohui, and undead energy surged out like a tide, drowning Gao Xiaolong in an instant. Ah! A painful scream resounded through the sky. The undead energy was everywhere, rushing into Gao Xiaolong's sea of consciousness, crazily nibbling away at his soul. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also raised his arm and punched towards the black-robed young man. One must know. Qin Feiyang's physical body had been tempered by heavenly lightning, and could easily crush a mid-grade divine artifact, not to mention this black-robed young man. In terms of physical strength, Qin Feiyang completely crushed the black-robed young man. Ah! Accompanied by a miserable scream, the black-robed young man was sent flying, and his arm was shattered, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. So strong? The black-robed young man's face changed, and he looked at Qin Feiyang in horror, and without caring about Gao Xiaolong, he turned and fled. In here, even if you have the ability to fly, you can't escape from my palm. Qin Feiyang said contemptuously, and the power of law fell, forming a barrier, trapping the black-robed young man inside. The Fire Lotus snorted, retracting her undead energy, and kicked Gao Xiaolong into the barrier. Then, the two of them madly bombarded the barrier within the barrier. Qin Feiyang didn't stop them, and he crossed his arms, watching with a smile. In the end, the two of them were exhausted, sweating profusely, but the barrier didn't even tremble. Are you bored? Then, can we have a good chat now? Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them with ridicule. The two of them raised their heads and looked at Qin Feiyang. Gao Xiaolong suddenly ran in front of the barrier, looked at Qin Feiyang, and begged, "Brother, this has nothing to do with me, it's him." Gao Xiaolong pointed at the black-robed young man behind him, and said, "He was greedy for the spatial divine artifact and soul stone on you, so he asked me to pretend to be Gao Xiaolong. I was instigated by him, please let me go." No, he was the one who instigated me." The black-robed young man's face changed, and he quickly ran over, looking at Qin Feiyang. "Bastard! Don't you dare slander me!" Gao Xiaolong roared. "I didn't. Brother, you have to believe me, I really want to help you find Gao Xiaolong." The black-robed young man looked at Qin Feiyang, and anxiously cried. "You really want to help me?" Qin Feiyang's eyes were full of ridicule, and he said, "Your plan was good, and you hid it well, so much so that I thought you were a good person. Unfortunately, you didn't expect Gao Xiaolong's sister to be by my side." Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them, and said, "But these are not important, I just want to know, where is the real Gao Xiaolong?" Literature Hall. Chapter 1943. The black-robed young man said, "I've been looking for him all day." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, interrupting the black-robed young man. "I don't want to hear the process, I only want the result." Fine, I'll tell you the result. I heard that this Gao Xiaolong was already invited out last night." The black-robed young man said. "Who invited him out?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "Young noble Feng." The black-robed young man said. "It really is him." Qin Feiyang's eyes glimmered. There was information about this young noble Feng in the old patriarch's memories. This person had a great background in the Nine Heavens Palace. His elder sister and elder brother were both geniuses in the Nine Heavens Palace. His parents were also Nine Heavens Palace's enforcement elders. Whether it was strength or status, they left others in the dust. However, the most terrifying person was his grandfather. According to the old patriarch's memories, this young noble Feng's grandfather was the Nine Heavens Palace's resource hall master. In other words, all the Nine Heavens Palace's resources were under his control. And the old patriarch used soul stones to bribe this young noble Feng to get rid of Gao Xiaolong. Moreover, the amount wasn't small, no less than 3,000 soul stones. Fire Lotus frowned, looking at Qin Feiyang. "Brother, this Gao Xiaolong, could it be?" Before Fire Lotus could finish, Gao Xiaolong shook her head. "No, my big brother is definitely fine. Miss Xiaolong, last night your big brother was invited out by young noble Feng. Now, a whole day has passed, do you think there's still hope?" Fire Lotus said. Gao Xiaolong lowered her head, tears flowed uncontrollably, her delicate body trembling. Qin Feiyang smiled. We can't jump to conclusions too early, maybe there's an accident? Yes. Life is unpredictable, maybe there really is an accident. Gao Xiaohui's spirit rose, saying. Qin Feiyang felt a little helpless. These were just words to comfort Gao Xiaohui. She actually believed it? Looks like this woman is really naive. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, looking at the black-robed young man. This young noble Feng, has he returned yet? I went to look for him, he hasn't returned yet. The black-robed young man shook his head. He didn't come back. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. An entire day had passed, and he still hadn't returned. Could there really be a turning point? Fire Lotus asked, how strong is this Gongzi Feng? The black-clothed youth said, Gongzi Feng is also a high-level war god. Advanced war god, his cultivation is the same as Big Brother's. In that case, it won't be easy for him to kill Big Brother? Gao Xiaohui hurriedly said. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. He really couldn't bear to break Gao Xiaohui's hopes. Although Gongzi Feng's cultivation was the same as Gao Xiaolong's, Gongzi Feng had a backer. In other words, whether it was divine arts or divine artifacts, Gao Xiaolong and Gongzi Feng couldn't be compared. In short, this Gao Xiaolong was most likely dead. Who? Qin Feiyang let out a long sigh and looked at the black-clothed young man and the black-clothed man. I want to ask you something else. Tell us, as long as you let us go, we'll tell you everything. The two smiled flatteringly. Qin Feiyang asked, do you know a person called Qin Badian? Qin Badian? The black-clothed young man and the black-clothed man looked at each other and suspicion crept into their eyes. You don't know? Qin Feiyang frowned. The black-clothed young man quickly waved his hand and said, no, we've heard of this person, but why are you asking about him? Anyone would be curious about such a legendary figure. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. That's true. This Qin Badian is indeed a legendary figure. It's said that when he entered the Nine Heavens Palace, he only took a few hundred years to break through to the monarch god realm and become the blazing sun of the Nine Heavens Palace. Later, he became an elder, disciplinary elder, palace master, and I heard that he even became the vice palace master of our Nine Heavens Palace. The black-clothed young man said with envy in his eyes. What? Vice palace master? Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus looked at each other. Of course, this is only a rumor. It's been too long, and we disciples don't know if it's true or not. The black-clothed young man said. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, then why did this Qin Badian disappear? There are many different theories about his disappearance, and we don't know either. The two shook their heads. Ancestor, where are you? Qin Feiyang looked at the sky and muttered to himself. His face was filled with disappointment and frustration. A few moments later, Qin Feiyang retracted his gaze and looked at the black-clothed young man. What's your name? Wang Duchuan. The black-clothed young man said. Wang Duchuan, Qin Feiyang murmured as a cold light flashed in his eyes. Two strands of law energy entered the black-clothed young man and Gao Xiaolong's forehead. Ah! Accompanied by two blood-curdling screams, their souls were annihilated, and they died on the spot. Why did you kill them? They are disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace. Gao Xiaohui looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. How dare they scheme against me? Not to mention disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace, even if they are elders of the Nine Heavens Palace, I will make them pay the price. Qin Feiyang smiled coldly and grabbed the two's cosmos pouches. The barrier shattered with a loud bang, and the power of rules swarmed over. The two's corpses were directly smashed into pieces, turning into a bloody mist. Looking at this scene, Gao Xiaohui couldn't help but shudder. The Nine Heavens Palace's position in the northern region was unshakable. And the disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace were like emperors in the outside world. No one dared to offend them. But this man in front of her killed them without mercy. And he killed 2 of them at once. This was too terrifying. Qin Feiyang turned to look at the 2 and said, I have to enter the 9 Heavens Palace and find out where this young noble is. How are you going to enter? Gao Xiaowei was stunned and hurriedly asked. Isn't that simple? Just disguise yourself as Wang Duchuan. Qin Feiyang smiled. Ah. Gao Xiaowei was stunned. Fire Lotus smiled and said, no wonder you specifically asked for his name. So you already have a plan in mind. Qin Feiyang laughed. Gao Xiaowei looked at the 2 and looked at Qin Feiyang emotionally. She bowed and said, you have helped us brother and sister so much. I really have no way to repay you. Help you? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Didn't you say that entering the 9 Heavens Palace is to investigate the whereabouts of young noble? Since it's to investigate young noble, it's naturally to help us. Don't deny it. Thank you very much. Gao Xiaowei said gratefully. Qin Feiyang laughed dryly and said, it's also to help you guys. Of course, it's also to help myself. Help yourself? Gao Xiaowei was stunned. Qin Feiyang said, there are some things that you're better off not knowing. Okay, I won't ask. But can I ask, what are your and Sister Fire Lotus's names? After knowing each other for so long, I still don't know your names? Gao Xiaowei smiled. Names? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly, and said, my name is Jiang Haotian. My sister is called Jiang Fire Lotus. Gao Xiaowei nodded. Jiang Haotian, how long has it been since I used this name? Qin Feiyang sighed inwardly. The past emerged like a tide. Thinking back to the spiritual state, the name Jiang Haotian was also famous. Shaking his head, Qin Feiyang took out a phantom pill and changed his appearance. Then, he took out a set of black robes from Wang Dachuan's Qingkuan bag and put them on neatly. On the clothes, there was a flame pattern. Immediately after, Qin Feiyang sent the 2 Qingkuan bags to the ancient castle. Then, with a flash, he appeared in the sky above the mountain range outside. The waning moon was in the void. In the dead of night, the giant mountain that led to the 9th Heaven Palace was like a giant beast standing on the ground. Qin Feiyang looked up at the top of the mountain with a determined light in his eyes. He murmured, even if it's a dragon's pool or a tiger's den, I must find out the reason for the disappearance of my ancestor. Whoosh! Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyang turned into a stream of light and flew towards the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain in the dark night was dead silent. Beside the sky stairway, the white-haired old man was still sitting in his original position like a stone statue, not moving at all. Qin Feiyang landed on the top of the mountain. He didn't disturb the white-haired old man, nor was he nervous at all. He calmly passed by the white-haired old man. The white-haired old man didn't stop him. Finally, Qin Feiyang stood at the bottom of the sky stairway, looked up, and stepped onto the first step. But just as his foot landed, the stone stairs under his feet suddenly shook and released a dazzling light. Qin Feiyang was surprised. What was going on? Swish. At the same time, the white-haired old man next to him also opened his eyes. His eyes weren't cloudy at all, and they were extremely sharp, like 2 sharp blades. Oh no. Qin Feiyang didn't even need to look back to know that the white-haired old man had opened his eyes. He made a prompt decision. Without any hesitation, he directly entered the Black Tortoise world, then controlled the Black Tortoise world and flew away without looking back. The white-haired old man suddenly stood up, and his divine will spread out in all directions. Gradually, a look of surprise appeared on his old face. There was no one. There was no spatial divine item. What was going on? Did he disappear into thin air? Back to Qin Feiyang. At this moment, he was already drenched in cold sweat. But more than that, he was puzzled. Why did the sky stairway react? Beside him, Fire Lotus and Gao Xiaohui also looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Wasn't he going to Jiutian Palace? Why did he come back and flee in a panic? After Qin Feiyang left the Black Tortoise world, the image disappeared, so they still didn't know what had happened outside. After fleeing for tens of thousands of miles, Qin Feiyang stopped and turned to look at Gao Xiaohui. Did your brother tell you about the sky stairway before? No. Gao Xiaohui shook her head and asked, what's wrong? Qin Feiyang immediately explained the situation briefly. There's such a thing? The two women were surprised. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, according to my guess, the sky stairway is definitely not an ordinary stone stairway. Huolian said, do you mean that the stairway of heaven gave a warning because it saw through your disguise? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded, looking a little annoyed. I should have directly read Wang Dachuan's memories just now. Literature Museum. Chapter 1944. That's not that important. Anyway, you used Wang Dachuan's identity just now. Your own identity wasn't exposed. Fire Lotus smiled. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled bitterly. Seems like it's impossible to sneak into Nine Heaven Palace without being noticed. Last year, I heard from Big Brother that Nine Heaven Palace will be recruiting disciples this year. Big Brother even asked me to try. Why don't we participate in the assessment together? Gao Xiaohui said. Recruiting disciples, Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and asked, do you know the exact time? I don't know. According to Big Brother, only the higher-ups of Nine Heaven Palace will announce it to the public. But such a big matter, as long as it's announced, we won't need to ask around. Gao Xiaohui said. So troublesome. Qin Feiyang rubbed his head and smiled helplessly. All right then, let's go to Sky Dragon City first. What kind of place is Sky Dragon City? Fire Lotus asked suspiciously. According to the old patriarch's memory, the mountain range we're in now is called Sky Dragon Mountain Range. And this is the hinterland of Sky Dragon Mountain Range. Sky Dragon City is just outside Sky Dragon Mountain Range. Qin Feiyang said. Huolian nodded her head in realization. Wait. I actually forgot about someone. Qin Feiyang was about to leave with the Black Tortoise world, but he suddenly slapped his head and said in annoyance. Who? Fire Lotus and Gao Xiaohui looked at him in confusion. Old Patriarch. This person can contact Gongzi Feng. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and brought the two girls to the desert. Below. The old patriarch squatted in the barrier formed by the rule force, his face full of despair and frustration. However, his qi had been repaired. Looking at the old patriarch, Gao Xiaohui was stunned for a moment before hatred appeared in her eyes. She said angrily, Big Brother Jiang, why didn't you kill him? This person is still useful. Qin Feiyang said. At the same time, the old patriarch also heard Gao Xiaohui's voice and raised his head to look at the three of them. His eyes flashed with killing intent. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything. He took out the old patriarch's interspatial ring and found an image crystal. This image crystal belonged to the old patriarch. Immediately after, Qin Feiyang stepped into the barrier and passed the image crystal to the old patriarch. He said, Contact Gongzi Feng. Contact Gongzi Feng? The old patriarch was taken aback. Forget it. You should just become a puppet. Qin Feiyang impatiently waved his hand and activated the puppet technique. The old patriarch's gaze immediately turned sluggish. Send a message to the young master. Qin Feiyang spoke again. Yes. This time, the old chief became obedient and obeyed. He immediately grabbed the image crystal and quickly recovered. Sister Fire Lotus, what's going on? Why does it feel like the old patriarch has changed into a different person? Gao Xiaohui sized up the old patriarch. Her eyes were filled with surprise. This puppet technique can not only read the other party's memories, but it can also turn the other party into a puppet at your command. Fire Lotus smiled faintly. So terrifying? Gao Xiaohui's gaze trembled. Time passed bit by bit. Wang. Finally. A purple figure appeared. Qin Feiyang also retreated to the side at the same time. He raised his head and sized up the figure. This was a young man in purple. He was about 1.78 meters tall. His facial features were handsome and his figure was straight like a pine tree. His long hair was tied together and he wore a purple crown. He exuded an extraordinary temperament. At this time, the young man was standing at the edge of a cliff at the peak of a mountain. His hands were behind his back, and there was a sense of arrogance between his brows. Greetings, Lord. The old patriarch bowed. It's you? Why are you looking for me? Gongzi Feng raised his eyebrows. The old patriarch smiled flatteringly. This lowly one wants to ask, how did you deal with Gao Xiaolong? Hearing this, young Master Feng's face was filled with impatience. He waved his hand and said, don't worry, this young master will definitely deal with him. Gao Xiaohui was shocked. Listening to what you said, it seems like Big Brother is still alive? Fire Lotus quickly made a shushing gesture to Gao Xiaohui. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he secretly controlled the old patriarch. He looked at young Master Feng and asked in surprise, Lord, what do you mean by that? Gao Xiaolong is still alive? No. Young Master Feng's impatient expression had a trace of anger. What's going on? Didn't Lord say that dealing with a small Gao Xiaolong is as easy as flipping your hand? The old patriarch said. I already said that this young master will deal with him. Aren't you annoying? Young Master Feng shouted. Yes, yes, yes. With Lord's identity and status, dealing with a small Gao Xiaolong is not a problem. The old patriarch nodded repeatedly. Isn't that right? However, this Gao Xiaolong really exceeded this young master's expectations. Young Master Feng said. What do you mean? The old patriarch was suspicious. This young master invited him out last night to deal with him in one fell swoop, but he actually guessed that this young master wanted to harm him. Before this young master could make a move, he escaped. Young Master Feng said angrily. Then, have you found him yet? The old patriarch asked. Not yet. Young Master Feng shook his head. No, the old patriarch was stunned, and he hurriedly said, Lord, you can't let him return alive. Don't worry, he will never be able to return. Because he entered the Sky Dragon Sea. Young Master Feng sneered. That's good. The old patriarch nodded and sighed in relief. All right, after dealing with him, this young master will contact you. Don't send me any messages in the future. If my old man knows that this young master is doing this kind of thing, he will definitely not forgive this young master. Young Master Feng said. Okay. The old patriarch respectfully replied. Soon after, young Master Feng's shadow disappeared. Let's go to the Sky Dragon Sea. Qin Feiyang also immediately confiscated the old patriarch's image crystal, controlled the Black Tortoise realm, and broke through the sky. Fire Lotus asked doubtfully, where is the Sky Dragon Sea? Qin Feiyang said, the sea at the end of the Sky Dragon mountain range is the Sky Dragon Sea, and it is also the largest forbidden area in the northern region. The largest forbidden area. Fire Lotus was shocked. That's right, in the old patriarch's memories, there is information related to the Sky Dragon Sea. The Sky Dragon Sea is boundless, and there are countless sea beasts. And the most terrifying thing is that in the Sky Dragon Sea, there is no way to open the altar, nor is there any way to send messages to the outside world. Qin Feiyang said. Unable to send messages? Then how did young Master Feng send us a message? Fire Lotus asked. Qin Feiyang said, then there is only one explanation, he did not enter the Sky Dragon Sea, he should be somewhere near the coast. If he doesn't enter the Sky Dragon Sea, how is he going to find Gao Xiaolong? Fire Lotus was puzzled. Qin Feiyang was helpless, lightly knocking Fire Lotus's head, saying, "Are you stupid? With his identity and background, doesn't he have a few lackeys under him?" Fire Lotus rubbed her head, thinking for a moment, then smiled embarrassedly. "That's true, ah." Gao Xiaohui suddenly spoke, "Big brother Jiang, there's something I can't figure out." Qin Feiyang turned to look at Gao Xiaohui, seeing her frown, confusion written all over her face. "What is it?" Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Gao Xiaohui said, "Young Master Feng's background is so big, ordinary things won't enter his eyes. How did the Guo family bribe him?" 3,000 soul stones. Qin Feiyang said. Gao Xiaohui was stunned for a moment, then said solemnly, 3,000 soul stones, this Guo family is really generous. Wait a minute. It's still not right. Gao Xiaohui shook her head again, pondering for a moment before saying, "Big brother Jiang, sister Fire Lotus, think about it, 3,000 soul stones is indeed not a small amount to us, but this young Master Feng's family members are all famous figures in the Nine Heavens Palace. Would he lack this little bit of soul stones?" Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus looked at each other, both frowning. Fire Lotus said, "I think what Xiaohui said makes sense. It's my negligence. This young Master Feng's grandfather is the resource hall's hall master, controlling the entire Nine Heavens Palace's resources. Not to mention 3,000 soul stones, even 30,000 soul stones wouldn't be a problem for him. There must be a reason behind this." Qin Feiyang said. "Did the old patriarch give young Master Feng other things?" Fire Lotus asked. Qin Feiyang said, "I can confirm this, no, only 3,000 soul stones." "Then that's strange." Fire Lotus was suspicious. "It seems like we can only get the answer from young Master Feng's mouth," Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. While the three of them were talking, the Sky Dragon Sea entered the screen. In the dark night, the Sky Dragon Sea didn't look any different from the Sky Dragon mountain range. A gentle breeze blew, waves splashed. It was very peaceful. Only a few sea beasts would occasionally rush out of the sea, letting out roars. It was hard to imagine that such a peaceful sea was the northern domain's biggest forbidden area. "Pay attention," Qin Feiyang reminded, his gaze sweeping over the screen, not letting go of any place. Earlier, when they were communicating with young Master Feng, he was standing at the edge of a cliff. Perhaps he was on one of the nearby peaks. Since it was related to Gao Xiaolong's safety, Gao Xiaohui didn't dare to be negligent, carefully searching every corner. They were getting closer to the shore of the Sky Dragon Sea. Literature Hall. Chapter 1945. Finally. Fire Lotus seemed to have discovered something as she looked at a certain spot on the left side of the screen in surprise. There was a mountain peak that was about 1,000 feet tall. The peak of the mountain was covered with rocks and weeds. And on one of the rocks, there seemed to be a black figure standing. The distance was too far and she couldn't see clearly. Could he be Gongzi Feng? Noticing Fire Lotus's abnormality, Gao Xiaohui also looked over with a trace of suspicion in her eyes. "Why don't we go and take a look?" Qin Feiyang smiled and controlled the Black Tortoise Realm to fly towards the peak of the mountain. Soon, the Black Tortoise Realm entered the sky above the peak of the mountain. The three of them took a closer look. If it wasn't Gongzi Feng, who else could it be? He was wearing a gorgeous purple robe that fluttered in the wind. He was like a son of God, showing off his extraordinary temperament. But at this moment, his entire body was emitting a gloomy aura. It seems that not killing Gao Xiaolong has made him very angry. Fire Lotus whispered. "Humph. For the sake of soul stones, he killed the innocent. One look and I can tell that he isn't a good person." Gao Xiaohui snorted. Qin Feiyang glanced at Gao Xiaohui and said indifferently, "Actually, don't make it sound so bad. If it was your Gao family, you would also exterminate the Guo family." "I won't," Gao Xiaohui said angrily. "You won't, but your family will. Your brother Gao Xiaolong will too. Actually, everyone is the same." We all want to survive, but the methods are different. Qin Feiyang said. Gao Xiaowei fell silent. She couldn't find a reason to refute this point. Fire Lotus glanced at Gao Xiaowei and looked at Qin Feiyang. Let's not talk about this first. Now that we have found Gongzi Feng, what should we do next? Wait. Qin Feiyang said. Late at night. In the sky above the heavenly dragon sea, two black figures flashed through the sky and landed on the peak of the mountain. They were two muscular men in black. They looked middle-aged and were more than 9 meters tall. Their upper bodies were bare and muscular, filled with a valiant aura. The aura they exuded was also extremely strong. They were two perfect war gods. However, there was no flame symbol of the 9 Heavens Palace on their clothes. Obviously, they were not disciples of 9 Heavens Palace. Young Master. The two of them landed on the mountain peak and bowed respectfully to young Master Feng. Yes. Gongzi Feng nodded. He looked at the two of them and asked, Have you found him? The two of them nodded. One of the muscular men waved his hand, and a young man covered in blood immediately appeared at Gongzi Feng's feet. Big brother, Gao Xiaowei shouted, her eyes filled with anger. That's right. The young man was none other than Gao Xiaolong. But at this moment, Gao Xiaolong's eyes were closed. Not only was his body covered in cuts and bruises, but one of his arms was also shattered. There was a bloody hole in his lower abdomen, and even his skull had been split open, causing blood to gush out. As for his life force, it was so weak that it was almost undetectable. Looks like there's no need to enter the Sea of Heavenly Dragons. Qin Feiyang murmured. Outside, when Gongzi Feng saw Gao Xiaolong, a trace of viciousness crept into his eyes, and he ruthlessly kicked Gao Xiaolong in the chest as he sneered, Bastard, I'll let you escape. But Gao Xiaolong was lying motionless on the ground, already unconscious. Gao Xiaowei looked at Qin Feiyang and begged, Big brother Jiang, I beg you, please save my big brother, or he will really die. Qin Feiyang remained silent. Gao Xiaowei's heart was burning with anxiety, and she looked at Fire Lotus. Don't worry. Fire Lotus comforted her softly. Outside. Gongzi Feng glanced at Gao Xiaolong, then looked at the two muscular men and asked, Did anyone see him? The Sea of Heavenly Dragons was right beside the 9 Heavens Palace, thus there were many 9 Heavens Palace disciples training in the Sea of Heavenly Dragons. No. The two of them shook their heads. Very good. Gongzi Feng nodded, and a cold light flickered in his eyes as he ordered, Kill him and destroy the evidence. Yes. The two of them responded respectfully and prepared to make a move on Gao Xiaolong. But at this moment, Gao Xiaolong, who was lying in front of them, disappeared without a trace. Where is he? The three of them were bewildered, and they immediately released their divine sense to cover the surroundings. The two muscular men looked at each other. There was actually no one. Damn it, who is it? Gongzi Feng was furious. He didn't expect that there would be someone else hiding here. Swish. Suddenly, a black-robed young man appeared beside the three of them. Gongzi Feng and the two muscular men immediately looked at the black-robed young man, and killing intent surged in their eyes. The three of you, don't be angry, I don't mean any harm. The black-robed young man waved his hand and smiled. Gongzi Feng asked solemnly, Are you the one who saved Gao Xiaolong? Yes. The black-robed young man nodded. Who are you? Such a big dog egg, how dare you interfere with this Gongzi's matter? Gongzi Feng shouted gloomily. I am Wang Dechuan. The black-robed young man smiled faintly. That's right. This person was Qin Feiyang. However, in order to not expose his true face, he came out to meet Gongzi Feng with the identity of Wang Dechuan. Wang Dechuan, Gongzi Feng sized up Qin Feiyang, and when he saw the flame pattern on Qin Feiyang's clothes, he frowned and said, You are also a disciple of the 9 Heavens Palace, don't you know my identity? Of course I know. The grandson of the Resource Hall Master, the son of the two law enforcement elders, and your big brother and big sister are also monstrous existences. This identity is not ordinary. Qin Feiyang laughed. Gongzi Feng shouted, then you still dare to go against this Gongzi? No, no, no. I am not going against you. On the contrary, I am here to help you. Qin Feiyang laughed. Help me? Gongzi Feng raised his brows. Gongzi, this person's intentions are unclear, please be careful. The two muscular men stood in front of Gongzi Feng and transmitted their voices with vigilance. Gongzi Feng's eyes flickered as he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, then I am really curious, what do you want to help me with? Qin Feiyang laughed and said, you have such a powerful family background, yet you are still doing such a murderous thing outside. I think you must have some hidden troubles. Gongzi Feng clenched his fists when he heard this, and the hostility between his brows intensified. Qin Feiyang said, based on my guess, it should be related to your family, right? You are investigating me? Gongzi Feng said coldly. No, no, no. I have never investigated you, it is purely a guess. Actually, I don't know the real reason either. But you can tell me, maybe I can really help you. Qin Feiyang laughed. With a mere low-level martial god like you? Gongzi Feng's face was filled with disdain. Even an ant can move an elephant. Qin Feiyang said. Gongzi Feng frowned and asked, then tell me, why do you want to help me? I don't believe that there is such a kind-hearted person in this world. Of course, I have conditions. First, let Gao Xiaolong go. Second, I want to ask about a person. Qin Feiyang said. I have already taken the Guo family's soul stone. If you ask me to let Gao Xiaolong go, aren't you asking me to break my promise? Gongzi Feng said angrily. We are all sensible people, don't say, break your promise. Moreover, even if you don't care, what can a mere Guo family do to you? Qin Feiyang laughed. Huh, Gongzi Feng laughed and said, you are quite an interesting person. Then the second one, who do you want to ask about? Qin Badian. Qin Feiyang said. What? You want to ask about Qin Badian? Gongzi Feng was shocked. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. What is your relationship with Qin Badian? Gongzi Feng looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Nothing much, I am just curious. Qin Feiyang smiled. Gongzi Feng sneered, do you think I will believe your nonsense? It doesn't matter if you believe it or not, in short, it won't do you any harm, right? Qin Feiyang said. That's true. Gongzi Feng nodded and pondered for a while, then shook his head and said, this Qin Badian, I have heard rumors about him, but I don't know much about him. Maybe my grandfather knows more about him. Qin Feiyang said, then I will have to trouble you to help me ask around. You are looking for the wrong person. If you ask my brothers and sisters, there might be hope, but Gongzi Feng shook his head and laughed at himself. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered and he said, so, your relationship with your grandfather is not that good? Yes. Although on the surface, I have a powerful background, but in reality, my life is worse than a dog's. Otherwise, I wouldn't be willing to be an executioner for a mere 3,000 soul stones. Gongzi Feng sighed. I would like to hear the details. Qin Feiyang cupped his fists and said. Gongzi Feng fell silent. After a long time, he sneered, we are not that close. I can spare Gao Xiaolong's life, but you must make him keep his mouth shut. If this matter is leaked, not only will he die, but you will also die. Seeing that Gongzi Feng did not answer directly, Qin Feiyang was a little disappointed. He nodded and smiled, all right, don't send any messages to the old patriarch. He is in my hands now. Let's go. Gongzi Feng looked deeply at Qin Feiyang, then waved his hand and left with the two strong men. Qin Feiyang also entered the Black Tortoise world. Wang Duchuan, Gongzi Feng frowned along the way. Gongzi, why didn't you kill him? Seeing that they were about to reach the Nine Heavens Palace, the two strong men couldn't help but ask Gongzi Feng. He was able to save Gao Xiaolong in front of us without us noticing. Do you think he's a simple person? Gong Zifeng raged. One of the strong men said, he's just an ordinary disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. It shouldn't be that simple. When this Gongzi returns, I will investigate this person's background. You guys should return to the Sky Dragon City and hide. Wait for my orders. If this person can really help me, it might not be a bad thing. Gong Zifeng said, and a light flickered in his eyes. Yes. The two burly men responded respectfully, then opened an altar and left without looking back. Gong Zifeng turned into a streak of light and flew towards the stairway. Black Tortoise World Qin Feiyang had been following behind Gong Zifeng and the other two, so he heard their conversation clearly. Gao Xiaohui stood at the side, taking care of Gao Xiaolong with tears in her eyes. Fire Lotus retracted her gaze and smiled. Qin Dage, it seems like there's something fishy about this Gong Zifeng. I don't care about his matters. I just want to use all my connections to find out the reason behind the ancestors' disappearance. Qin Feiyang said. This time, he entered the ancient world to increase his strength and seek justice for the inner demons. On the other hand, he wanted to find the ancestor. Therefore, he would do anything. Looking at Gong Zifeng, he drove the Black Tortoise World and followed the two strong men to the Sky Dragon City. Chapter 1946. Outside the Sky Dragon mountain range, there was a vast plain. And on the plain, there was a huge city. The city covered an area of 1,000 li majestic buildings towered from the ground to the sky, exuding a magnificent aura. This was the Sky Dragon City. The Sky Dragon City had 4 city gates. Every city gate was heavily guarded, and the pedestrians who came and went had to be interrogated. The security was quite tight. Furthermore, a lifelike heavenly dragon was engraved on top of the city gates. Every stroke of the dragon contained an astonishing charm. Outside the city, in a dense forest, 2 burly figures appeared out of thin air. It was the 2 burly men. The Black Tortoise World also appeared with them. But because the Black Tortoise World was hidden in the void, the 2 burly men didn't know. Qin Feiyang monitored the 2 burly men and said to Fire Lotus, bring the siblings to the courtyard below and check on Gao Xiaolong's injuries. I'll follow them. Okay. Fire Lotus nodded. Gao Xiaohui immediately carried Gao Xiaolong and flew down behind Fire Lotus. Watching the 3 enter the courtyard, Qin Feiyang's face revealed a trace of a smile. Actually, he saved Gao Xiaolong for peace of mind. After all, the Gao family was exterminated because of him. And now, he successfully saved Gao Xiaolong, so he didn't let his conscience down. Outside, the 2 burly men walked straight to the city gate. Qin Feiyang had been following behind the 2 of them. Looking at their backs, there was a helpless expression on his face. These 2 men were perfect war gods. Their souls were extremely powerful. Unless they were willing, it was impossible to use the enslavement seal and puppetry art to control them. Puppetry art aside, let's talk about the enslavement seal. For a long time, the enslavement seal had been successful. But now, it was useless. This made Qin Feiyang somewhat sullen. When they reached the city gate, the 2 burly men entered the city without looking back after they were interrogated. Qin Feiyang also easily sneaked into the city. The city was bustling with noise and excitement. On both sides of the street, there were many restaurants of various sizes. However, they were all of average quality. The 2 burly men did not go deep into the city. After walking for several hundred meters, they entered a very simple and unremarkable restaurant. There were only 5 floors in the restaurant. Other than the hall on the first floor, the 4 floors above were all rooms for accommodation. There were only a dozen or so tables in the hall, and only 2 or 3 tables were occupied. It was very quiet. Sirs, you're back. A waiter from the restaurant greeted the 2 burly men with a smile. Clearly, these 2 people were already regulars here. Yes. Send up 2 jars of wine and a few side dishes later. One of the burly men laughed. All right. The waiter nodded and ran to the kitchen to make the arrangements. The 2 burly men followed him up to the 3rd floor, entered a room, and closed the door tightly. After running around for an entire day, I'm exhausted. One of them collapsed on the bed and said tiredly. That's right. The most important thing is that we finally found Gao Xiaolong, but he was rescued again. The other person sat at the table and poured a cup of tea. He shook his head as he drank. The burly man on the bed sat up and said with a frown, Do you think young master was too careless this time? What do you mean? The other person was startled. He put down the teacup and asked suspiciously. That Wang Duchuan is only an initial martial immortal, but he said he could help young master. No matter how I look at it, I feel like he's just fooling us. The burly man said. You can't say it like that. This person's strength is indeed nothing special. However, since he dares to stand in front of us and say such words, it means that he has confidence. Moreover, there's a good saying, you can't judge a book by its cover. Don't underestimate anyone. The person sitting at the table said with a smile. He picked up the teacup and continued to drink. The burly man sitting on the bed pondered for a while and nodded, That's true. However, our young master is really pitiful. Shoo, you can't say such things carelessly. The burly man's expression changed and he hurriedly whispered. What are you afraid of? There's only the 2 of us here. Who can hear us? Although our young master is an illegitimate child and is a little arrogant, he usually works very hard. He's also very polite to us subordinates. How can such a good young man be treated like this by his parents and grandfather? It's too unfair. The burly man got down from the bed and walked to the table and complained with dissatisfaction. There's no such thing as fairness in this world. Don't say any more. Be careful that the walls have ears. After all, this matter isn't very glorious. If it were to spread, who knows how many people would laugh at young master. The burly man drinking tea shook his head and sighed. Illegitimate child, black tortoise world. Hearing the conversation between the 2, Qin Feiyang finally understood what was going on and didn't continue to listen. Because as long as he knew about this matter, he would be able to understand everything else. He's also a pitiful person. Entering the small wooden house, Qin Feiyang looked at Gao Xiaolong lying on the floor in the main hall and asked, How's his situation? His qi is shattered, his sea of knowledge is shattered, his internal organs are almost all shattered, plus he lost a lot of blood. His situation is not optimistic. Fire Lotus said. What about his soul? Qin Feiyang asked. Fire Lotus said, His soul is fine, but his divine sense has been overused. Big brother Jiang, I beg you, please save my big brother. Gao Xiaowei looked at Qin Feiyang pitifully with tear-stained eyes. Her universe bag was destroyed and she didn't even have a single pellet on her. She could only watch helplessly. On Gao Xiaolong's body, there was no universe bag or universe ring. Obviously, it was either taken away by the 2 burly men. Either that, or it was destroyed during the fight with the 2 burly men. Qin Feiyang looked at Gao Xiaowei, then at Gao Xiaolong, and took out his universe ring. There were a lot of pellets inside the old patriarch's universe ring. After searching for a while, he finally found a spirit sea pellet, soul essence pellet, healing pellet, regeneration pellet, and bone replenishing pellet. Thank you, big brother Jiang. Gao Xiaowei received the pellets and squatted on the floor, putting them into Gao Xiaolong's mouth one by one. Fire Lotus also stood up and looked at Qin Feiyang, asking, How is it? Qin Feiyang said, This Gongzi Feng is an illegitimate child. Illegitimate child? Fire Lotus was stunned for a moment, then said in realization, No wonder he did this behind his family's back. From the 2 burly men's words, it's not hard to tell that this Gongzi Feng is a good person. I think he was forced to do this because he had no other choice. After all, an illegitimate child is not well liked. Qin Feiyang said. Now I'm starting to sympathize with him. Fire Lotus smiled. Sympathize? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled, saying, in this world, there are pitiful people everywhere. If you sympathize with all of them, how can you handle it? But this person can be used by me. You want to subdue him? Fire Lotus was stunned and asked. Subdue? How would I have the mood to train him? Moreover, I don't have any plans to recruit him now. The two of us are just mutually beneficial. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said. Those fellows in the castle were already enough to give him a headache. No matter how many soul stones he had, it wouldn't be enough. Isn't that asking for trouble? Next. Qin Feiyang didn't say anything else, lowering his head and muttering to himself. Huo Lian looked at him curiously for a while and said with a smile, are you thinking about something sneaky again? Qin Feiyang's face darkened, lightly knocking Fire Lotus's head, speechless. What are you thinking about all day? Fire Lotus rubbed her head, pursing her lips. Qin Feiyang transmitted, I'm thinking, can the Black Tortoise world sneak into Nine Heaven Palace without anyone knowing? You still want to sneak in? Fire Lotus said in a daze. Qin Feiyang thought, the assessment is really troublesome, and what I hate the most is trouble. I think it's better not to take the risk. Let's not talk about whether the Sky Stairway will notice the Black Tortoise world. Even if you use the Black Tortoise world to sneak into Nine Heaven Palace, it's not convenient to ask for information. Because you don't dare to go out. Once you go out, your whereabouts will be exposed. You might even attract the attention of the higher-ups of Nine Heaven Palace. So I think it's better to take the assessment and enter Nine Heaven Palace openly. Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang thought about it and felt that it made sense. If he really attracted the attention of the higher-ups of Nine Heaven Palace, it would be more difficult to ask for information in the future. So, it's better not to alert the enemy. All right then, keep an eye on her and don't let her run around. I'm going to cultivate in the castle. When Gao Xiaolong wakes up, inform me immediately. Qin Feiyang transmitted. Fire Lotus replied in silence. Inside the castle, on the ground, there was a big pile of universe pouches, as well as iron and jade boxes. These were all looted from the Guo clan's treasure vault. However, no one tidied them up. Qin Feiyang looked at Willow Tree and the others. These guys were cultivating in seclusion. Even the white-eyed wolf, who had always been greedy for money, was indifferent. A change in personality? Qin Feiyang felt helpless. He thought that everyone had already cleaned up, but he didn't expect them to still be piled up on the ground. It seemed like he could only wait for Dan Wangkai to deal with it. But he didn't know how much Dan Wangkai had comprehended to become a god. Phew. Qin Feiyang exhaled and walked to the front of the altar. He grabbed a universe pouch and checked it. His face was full of helplessness. This universe pouch was specially used to store soul stones. In the past few days, he had obtained a lot of soul stones, but now, there were only a few dozen left. It was not enough at all. Qin Feiyang shook his head and took out the remaining dozens of soul stones. He sat down cross-legged and began to refine them. However, although there weren't many soul stones left, everyone's cultivation had improved a lot. Everyone was working hard to become a war god. Including the white-eyed wolf, Qin Rushuang, Willow Tree, Yu Huang, and Lei Bao. And the blood Qilin, who was already a war god, was trying his best to become a war god. Chapter 1947. In the blink of an eye, a day had passed outside. Inside the ancient castle, a whole year had passed. Qin Feiyang had already refined those soul stones, and he had to rely on himself to slowly condense his divine sense. Originally, he wanted to continue his seclusion, but Gao Xiaolong woke up. Inside the main hall, Gao Xiaolong sat on the chair in front of the tea table, looking around. A trace of weakness could be seen between his brows. He was awake, but his injuries had not fully healed. Gao Xiaolong sat beside him, taking care of him meticulously. As for Huolian, she sat quietly at the side. Shua. Qin Feiyang appeared in the main hall out of thin air. Gao Xiaolong immediately stood up, cupping his fists. I presume this brother is Jiang Haotian. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded, sitting on the main seat, smiling. Sit down and talk. Gao Xiaolong returned to his seat, his face full of gratitude. Xiaowei has already told me everything. Thank you, brother Jiang. You're welcome. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, smiling. What do you plan to do next? Gao Xiaolong clenched his fists, speaking solemnly. Of course, I'm going to find the Guo family to take revenge. You're indeed a hot-blooded man. I can lend you a hand. Qin Feiyang laughed heartily. Help me? Gao Xiaolong was stunned, asking suspiciously, Brother Jiang, don't blame this little brother for thinking too much. We're not related in any way. Why would you help us? Helping you is not without conditions. Qin Feiyang smiled. What conditions? Gao Xiaolong asked. Qin Feiyang said, I need to enter the Nine Heavens Palace. Enter the Nine Heavens Palace? Gao Xiaolong was stunned, frowning. With Brother Jiang's ability, entering the Nine Heavens Palace shouldn't be a difficult matter, right? Qin Feiyang laughed. That's hard to say. What if there's an accident? Moreover, I'm afraid of trouble, so I need someone to take care of it. I understand. Gao Xiaolong nodded. Brother Gao is indeed an understanding person. Qin Feiyang smiled. I'm ashamed. Gao Xiaolong waved his hands and smiled wryly. To tell you the truth, I'm just an ordinary disciple in the Nine Heavens Palace. Even if I wanted to help you, I wouldn't be able to do much. I can only think of a way to give you some information so that you can prepare in advance. That's enough. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Oh right, is there any mystery hidden in the heaven's stairway leading to the Nine Heavens Palace? Brother Jiang, why do you ask? Gao Xiaolong was suspicious. I won't hide it from Brother Gao. I once disguised myself and tried to sneak into Nine Heaven Palace. However, the moment I stepped onto the first step of the stairway to heaven, the stairway to heaven sent out a warning. Qin Feiyang said. Ugh. Gao Xiaolong was dumbfounded and speechless. Brother Jiang, your guts are really big. Since ancient times, you are the first person who dared to sneak into the Nine Heavens Palace like this. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Gao Xiaolong's gaze swept over the courtyard outside, asking in a low voice, Brother Jiang, is it convenient to talk here? Qin Feiyang said, Don't worry, there's no place safer than here. Gao Xiaolong sighed in relief and whispered, I won't hide it from Brother Jiang. There is indeed a mystery hidden in the stairway to heaven. What mystery? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Fire Lotus and Gao Xiaowei also looked at Gao Xiaolong curiously. Gao Xiaolong said, The stairway to heaven is actually a divine artifact. Divine artifact, Qin Feiyang muttered. Gao Xiaowei was surprised and asked, Brother, what grade is the stairway to heaven? I don't know. I'm not the only one who doesn't know. Other than a few big shots in the Nine Heavens Palace, no one else knows. However, there are rumors that the reason why our Nine Heavens Palace can stand tall in the northern region is because of the stairway to heaven. Gao Xiaolong said. This, Qin Feiyang was shocked. If the rumors were true, then the stairway to heaven was definitely a heaven-defying divine artifact. No one knows how strong the stairway to heaven is, but there is one thing that all the disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace know. That is, it can distinguish between the real and the fake. Thus, no matter how you hide, as long as you step on the stairway to heaven, your true self will be revealed. Gao Xiaolong smiled. So that's how it is. Qin Feiyang was enlightened. Gao Xiaolong continued, Moreover, the stairway to heaven has another ability, which is to distinguish the disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace. How? Gao Xiaowei was suspicious. Every disciple that enters the Nine Heavens Palace has to refine a drop of blood essence and merge it with the stairway to heaven. This drop of blood essence is equivalent to a medium. The stairway to heaven uses the drop of blood essence to determine whether someone is a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. Moreover, the entire Nine Heavens Palace is covered by a layer of divine force, and the stairway to heaven is the only entrance. Moreover, you can't fly above the stairway to heaven. You can only walk up step by step. Thus, it's impossible to sneak into the Nine Heavens Palace. Gao Xiaolong said. You can't fly? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. The Nine Heavens Palace's defenses were really terrifying. Fire Lotus said, so, the only way to enter the Nine Heavens Palace is to take part in the test? That's right. Gao Xiaolong nodded. What kind of test is it? Qin Feiyang asked. The test is different every time, so I can't tell you anything. However, there is one thing that is the same every time, and that is, it's cruel and bloody. Gao Xiaolong said solemnly, and the expression in his eyes was solemn. How cruel? How bloody? Gao Xiaolui was curious. It's hard for you to imagine. Let me tell you this. Every time the Nine Heavens Palace recruits disciples, there are at least several 100,000 participants, but in the end, the number of survivors doesn't exceed 1,000. Gao Xiaolong said. What? Gao Xiaolui stood up, and her face was filled with shock. Several 100,000 participants, but in the end, less than 1,000 survived? What kind of concept was this? It was too scary. Actually, the Nine Heavens Palace isn't as beautiful as you think. Although you can get a lot of resources after entering the Nine Heavens Palace, the cruelty inside is even scarier than the test. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. Gao Xiaolong sighed. Qin Feiyang smiled, this is normal, it's the same everywhere. Gao Xiaolong was stunned for a second, then he smiled. Brother Jiang can still maintain such a calm expression, looks like you've seen the world. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and with a thought, an old figure appeared in the hall. It's him. Gao Xiaolong stood up, and hatred filled his eyes. That's right. The person who suddenly appeared was the old patriarch. Don't worry, he's now my puppet. Qin Feiyang smiled. Gao Xiaolong nodded in realization and sighed in relief. Qin Feiyang said, I'll let him accompany you to the Guo family. With him helping you, there shouldn't be any problems. Let the old patriarch kill the Guo family's people? Gao Xiaolong was stunned for a second, then he laughed loudly. Brother Jiang, this move of yours is really good, but I like it. Qin Feiyang smiled. As for the old patriarch, after you've taken your revenge, don't let him come back. Gao Xiaolong looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. Qin Feiyang said, Brother Gao doesn't understand what I'm saying. I understand, of course I understand. Gao Xiaolong quivered and quickly nodded, then he said, but, he's a perfect combat god, wouldn't it be a pity to kill him? So what if he's a perfect combat god? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Hearing this, Gao Xiaolong's heart was in turmoil. Even a perfect combat god was so disdainful, where did this person come from? At the same time, Qin Feiyang drove the Black Tortoise World out of the restaurant, then found a secluded place and sent Gao Xiaolong, Gao Xiaolui, and the old patriarch out. In this way, only Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus were left in the main hall. Fire Lotus smiled, Qin Dage, I thought you'd personally deal with Guozixiong? People who want to achieve great things don't have to do everything personally, they have to plan and plan. Not to mention, he's just a jumping clown, there's no need for me to personally deal with him. Qin Feiyang laughed. So narcissistic. Fire Lotus grumbled. But, you have to hurry up and settle your matter. Qin Feiyang said again. What matter do I have? Fire Lotus asked suspiciously. Departed spirit barrier breaking pellet. Now that we have the departed spirit flower, we're still missing the Een soul wood, death god fruit, and 9 yang lightning fire. When the sun rises, let's go to the city and see if we can find these 3 things. Qin Feiyang said. Thank you, Qin Dage, you're really a good person. Fire Lotus looked gratefully at Qin Feiyang. Ha, Qin Feiyang laughed. Perhaps only in this woman's eyes, he was a good person. Sky Dragon City in the morning was very quiet. A man and a woman were walking slowly on a street. They looked around with curiosity in their eyes. It was Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus. Fire Lotus was still wearing a mask as usual. Although her face could not be seen, her tall and sexy figure attracted strange gazes. Qin Feiyang was no longer in disguise. He was wearing a pure white robe. His figure was tall and straight, and his long hair was draped over his shoulders. There was a faint smile on his face, and he gave off a warm and amiable feeling. As the sun rose, the streets gradually became lively. "Brother, may I ask, is there any place to trade in Sky Dragon City?" Qin Feiyang caught a middle-aged man in a hurry and asked with a smile. "Place to trade?" The middle-aged man sized up Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus, and said, "Is this your first time in Sky Dragon City?" "Brother, you have good eyes. We siblings are new here and know nothing about Sky Dragon City, so I hope you can give us some pointers." Qin Feiyang smiled. "I don't dare to give you pointers. In Sky Dragon City, there is only one place to trade, and that is the Treasure Pavilion. If you need anything, you can go to the Treasure Pavilion." "How do I get to the Treasure Pavilion?" Qin Feiyang asked. "Follow this road and walk for about 500 miles. When you reach there, you can ask anyone and you will know the location of the Treasure Pavilion." The middle-aged man said. "Thank you." Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. "No need." The middle-aged man waved his hand and hurriedly left. 500 miles should be the center of Sky Dragon City, let's go there quickly. Qin Feiyang smiled and led Fire Lotus down the road. 500 miles, for a mortal, even if they didn't stop and rest, it would still take a few days. But for Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus, this distance was nothing. Soon, they entered the center of the city. The center of the city was even more lively and prosperous. The restaurants were also extremely grand and luxurious. Qin Feiyang asked someone and soon stopped in front of a huge building. It was an ancient hall with a total of 10 floors. The door was grand and imposing. There were guards on both sides, and the 2 guards were perfect war gods. There was an endless stream of people going in and out. On top of the door, there were 2 large words that looked like dragons flying and phoenixes dancing, emitting an intimidating aura. Treasure Pavilion. Chapter 1948. It's really impressive. Even the guards are perfect war gods. Fire Lotus transmitted her voice. Yes. The backer of this treasure pavilion is definitely not simple. Qin Feiyang secretly said. The 2 walked side by side towards the door. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang's body stiffened. He stopped and turned his head to scan the pedestrians on the street. "What's wrong?" Fire Lotus secretly asked. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. "I feel a familiar aura." Familiar aura? Fire Lotus was stunned. She suspiciously looked around and secretly asked, "Could it be Dong Xingyang and the others?" "No." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Suddenly, his gaze was locked on a spot more than 10 meters away. There was a hint of surprise on his face. There stood a young man. He looked about 18 or 19 years old. His height was also more than 1.8 meters. He wore a fiery red robe. His long hair was also red like fire. Looking at him, his entire person was like a ball of fire. The man in the fire robe stood in the crowd. He was also silently looking at the door of the treasure pavilion. "Who is he?" Fire Lotus followed Qin Feiyang's gaze and secretly asked. "I've never seen him before. But I don't know why, but he gives me a sense of déjà vu, and although his aura is somewhat familiar, it also gives me a sense of strangeness." Qin Feiyang secretly said. Suddenly, The man in the fire robe seemed to have sensed something and also looked towards Qin Feiyang. That pair of eyes also seemed to be condensed by flames. It gave people a faint burning feeling. What's going on? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. The moment he looked at the man in the fire robe, an indescribable throbbing appeared in his heart. Where have I seen him before? However, the flame-robed man didn't reveal any emotion to Qin Feiyang. He was very cold. He only glanced at him for a moment before withdrawing his gaze and walking into the treasure pavilion. Fire Lotus watched the man enter the treasure house and asked in a low voice, could it be an illusion? It shouldn't be. Qin Feiyang shook his head. His eyes flashed as he strode into the treasure pavilion. Fire Lotus followed closely beside him. The first floor of the treasure pavilion was dazzling with gold and jade, and the space was extremely large. Transparent counters were neatly arranged, and various iron and jade boxes were placed within them. These metal and jade boxes were of different sizes. They were all made from the best materials and the workmanship was very exquisite. There was no doubt about it. The contents of these boxes were definitely the items that the treasure pavilion was going to sell. Although these boxes were all tightly shut, it was impossible to see what was inside. But beside each box, there was a label. It recorded the relevant information about the box. For example, the label beside one of the jade boxes said, Flying Dragon Sword Technique, Low-Grade God Technique, 100,000 God Crystals. There was also a label beside one of the metal boxes that said, 10,000 Year Blood Ginseng, 1,000 God Crystals. And on the other side of the counter, there was a long metal box. The label beside it said, Raging Flame Blade, Low-Grade God Weapon, 100,000 God Crystals. In short, every item here had a clear price. Qin Feiyang led Fire Lotus, curiously looking at the labels on the counter while paying attention to the flame-robed man. The flame-robed man looked here and there, as if he was strolling aimlessly. Fire Lotus said, Qin Dage, look at these low-grade god weapons and low-grade god techniques, why are they all so cheap? Every low-grade deity art and low-grade deity artifact only cost 100,000 deity crystals. One had to know. These divine items would be priceless treasures in the great Qin Empire and the Forgotten Continent. But here, they were being sold in public. And they were so cheap. Qin Feiyang laughed inwardly. After all, this is the ancient world, such low-grade god weapons and god techniques are worthless. What about these herbs? Look at the red flame glass tree recorded here, and it's even 10,000 years old, and it's only 500 god crystals. And the 10,000 year blood ginseng I saw just now, it's only 1,000 god crystals. Fire Lotus said. The things here are indeed unimaginably cheap. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. For example, the 10,000 year blood ginseng and the red flame glass tree were all priceless precious herbs in the great Qin Empire and the Forgotten Continent. Suddenly, Qin Feiyang looked at a jade box, and the label beside it said, Universe Ring, 10 million God Crystals. What? Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Fire Lotus was also dumbfounded. A universe ring actually cost 10 million God Crystals. Oh my god. Was this a joke? The value of a universe ring was 100 times that of a low-grade divine artifact? No wonder even the Gao family and the Guo family, which had perfected war gods, had so few universe rings. Fire Lotus. Qin Feiyang murmured. What? Fire Lotus looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang glanced at the green universe ring on Fire Lotus's finger and said in a low voice, Can you give this universe ring back to me? Thinking that he had given away 10 million God crystals, he couldn't help but feel pained. Fire Lotus was slightly dazed, and immediately protected the universe ring and snorted, Don't even think about it. Qin Feiyang smiled wryly and thought, I'm just kidding, but you'd better put away the universe ring first and not attract too much attention. The universe ring was a symbol of status. Okay. Fire Lotus looked around, and when no one was looking, she secretly took off the universe ring and put it in her pocket. Fire Lotus, that person is going to the second floor. Let's follow him. Qin Feiyang suddenly grabbed Fire Lotus and walked towards the staircase on the second floor. The man in the red robe had already gone up the stairs. On the second floor. It was also a spacious hall. Rows of transparent counters were arranged neatly. Inside the counters, there were also iron and jade boxes of various sizes. And just like on the first floor, every item had a price tag. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus went up to the second floor. Compared to the crowded and noisy first floor, the second floor was much quieter. Qin Feiyang glanced around the hall. There were about 1,000 people in the hall. There were still a lot of people, but not everyone was making a ruckus. Soon, Qin Feiyang saw the man in the red robe in front of a counter not far away on the left. Just like before, he was looking around, giving people the impression that he was really here to have fun. Qin Dage, do you have to care so much about someone you don't know? Fire Lotus frowned and said. Qin Feiyang was startled, then smiled wryly and said, "You're right, I'm too stubborn." Why did he come to the treasure pavilion this time? To collect the soul wood, the god of death fruit and the 9 suns thunder fire. But now, he had forgotten the purpose of this trip because of a stranger. How embarrassing. Whoosh. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and looked around separately with Fire Lotus. The items on the second floor are a level higher in quality and value than those on the first floor. The items on the first floor were basically the lowest level divine arts and divine weapons, as well as some ordinary herbs. But the items on the second floor are all middle-grade divine weapons and divine arts. The medicine rooms, such as the spiritual infant fruit, fortune fruit, mysterious een grass, and so on, were also common. However, after searching the entire hall, he still couldn't find the soul wood, the 9 suns thunder fire and the god of death fruit. Moreover, not only the undead barrier-breaking pellets ingredients were missing, the divine soul pellet, divine force pellet, divine life pellet, heavenly dust divine pellet, for symbols limitless pellet, and dragon soul primordial spirit pellet were also missing. Qin Dage, come here. Fire Lotus's voice suddenly sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang looked around and saw Fire Lotus standing in front of a counter in an inconspicuous corner, waving at him. Did she find it? As soon as Qin Feiyang thought of this, he hastily strode over. Fire Lotus pointed at a jade box on the counter and said with a smile, "This thing should be very helpful to you." Qin Feiyang looked down. The jade box was the size of a palm, dim and covered in a layer of dust. It's still gray? Qin Feiyang was stunned. The fact that there was dust meant that no one had touched this jade box for a long time. And even the staff of the treasure pavilion didn't care much about it, otherwise they would have cleaned it every now and then. What good things could there be in a jade box that even the staff didn't care about? Qin Feiyang was a little suspicious. But why did Fire Lotus say that the things inside would be very helpful to him? Qin Feiyang looked at the label next to the jade box suspiciously. The label was also covered in a layer of dust. However, when he saw the contents of the label, he immediately froze, his eyes full of disbelief. Chaos Divine Art, a legendary secret art, has a heaven-defying power, allowing the original body and the inner demons to become one, doubling the strength. This secret art is indeed extraordinary, but in this world, no one can cultivate it. What a pity. A sigh suddenly sounded beside Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus. The two of them were startled and turned their heads to look, only to see the man in the flame robe standing behind them. At this moment, he was looking at the label next to the jade box, shaking his head and sighing. "Hello, both of you." The man in the flame robe also retracted his gaze and looked at the two of them with a smile. "Good." Qin Feiyang nodded. The man in the flame robe asked, "The two of you are looking at this chaos divine art, could it be that you want to buy it?" "That's what I mean." Qin Feiyang smiled. Indeed, as the man in the flame robe said before, this chaos divine art was a legendary secret art, which had the ability to allow the original body and the inner demons to become one. And after the fusion, the battle strength would soar several times. It could be said that this was a supreme secret art. But there were restrictions. This chaos divine art could only be cultivated by people with the inner demons. On the other hand, if one didn't have the inner demons, even if they obtained the chaos divine art, it would be meaningless, like a piece of scrap paper. When the man in the flame robe heard Qin Feiyang's reply, a trace of surprise appeared on his face, and he asked in a low voice, "Brother, could it be that you have the inner demons?" Inner demons. When Qin Feiyang heard this, he lowered his head and looked at the jade box, a trace of unconcealable sorrow in his eyes. Fire Lotus secretly sighed and sent a voice transmission, "Qin Dage, this person came to talk to you for no reason. His purpose is definitely not simple, don't expose any flaws." And Qin Feiyang secretly replied and restrained his emotions. He turned to look at the man in the flame robe and shook his head with a smile. "I don't have the inner demons." That's true. A person with the inner demons can't become a god. And brother's cultivation is at the initial stage of the war god realm, so naturally you can't have the inner demons. However, since you don't have the inner demons, why do you want to buy this chaos divine art? The man in the flame robe was curious. Literature Museum. Chapter 1949. Fire Lotus raised an eyebrow and said unhappily, "It's our business if we want to buy it. What does it have to do with you?" The man was stunned and hurriedly cupped his hands. "I'm sorry for my rudeness. Please forgive me. If there's nothing else, go away. Don't bother us." Fire Lotus waved her hand impatiently. "Yes, yes, yes." The man nodded with a smile and turned to leave. However, just as he turned around, he turned to look at Qin Feiyang and smiled meaningfully. "Brother, please take a good look at the label. There's a lot going on." With that, he turned around and left without looking back. Label? Qin Feiyang looked suspiciously at the man's back, then lowered his head to look at the label again. Fire Lotus also glanced at the label and snorted. "I didn't see anything fishy at all. He must be bluffing. Qin Dage, don't listen to his nonsense." "No." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. "What's wrong?" Fire Lotus was stunned. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, "Look at the price tag on this label." "Price tag?" Fire Lotus looked down again and her expression froze. There was actually a 0 on the label. In other words, the Chaos Origin Divine Art was given for free. "Qin Dage, what's going on?" Fire Lotus was puzzled. Although there were very few people in this world who had inner demons, this was a legendary secret technique after all. No matter what, the treasure pavilion wouldn't give it away for free. Qin Feiyang said, "It looks like the Chaos Origin Divine Art is given for free, but it might actually be a trap." "A trap?" Fire Lotus was stunned. "Yes. According to my guess, the treasure pavilion might be using the Chaos Origin Divine Art as bait to lure out people with inner demons." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Fire Lotus was surprised. "According to what you said, aren't you in danger?" "What danger am I in?" Qin Feiyang was puzzled. "You have inner demons." Fire Lotus thought. That was in the past. Qin Feiyang sighed. The inner demons were already dead. Even if he obtained the Chaos Origin Divine Art now, it would be meaningless. His intention to purchase the Chaos Origin Divine Art was purely to keep it as a souvenir. Fire Lotus was stunned for a moment before she transmitted her voice, "Qin Dage, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring this up." "It's all right." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and looked at a staff member not far away. He smiled and said, "Come here." The staff member ran over and smiled at the two of them. "Young master, young miss, is there anything you need?" Qin Feiyang asked, "Is this primordial chaos divine art for sale?" Chaos Origin Divine Art, the staff member was stunned. He sized up Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus and said, Could it be that the two of you have inner demons? Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus shook their heads. Then I'm sorry. We only sell this Chaos Origin divine art to people with inner demons. No, it's a gift. It's a gift to people with inner demons. The staff member smiled apologetically. Why? Qin Feiyang frowned. The staff member smiled and said, this is an order from the higher-ups. We subordinates don't know. All right. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The staff member smiled and left. Wait. Fire Lotus suddenly spoke again. The staff member stopped and turned to Fire Lotus. He asked, young miss, do you have any other orders? Fire Lotus said, do you have Een Soul Wood, Death Fruit, and 9 Yang Lightning Fire? Een Soul Wood, Death Fruit, 9 Yang Lightning Fire. The staff member thought for a while and shook his head. The second floor doesn't have these. You can go to the third floor. If you don't have them on the third floor, then you can only go to the auction house. The auction house is underground on the first floor. Got it. Fire Lotus nodded. The staff member left. Fire Lotus retracted her gaze and looked at Qin Feiyang. It seems that this Chaos Origin divine art is hiding something. Yes. But why did that person remind us? Qin Feiyang frowned and turned to look at the hall. There was no trace of the man in the fire robe. Where did he go? Fire Lotus's face was also full of suspicion. How did he disappear in the blink of an eye? Qin Feiyang said, he might have gone to the third floor. Let's go there and take a look. Yes. Fire Lotus nodded. The two turned and walked to the third floor. Qin Dage, he was so kind. Was it too much for me to treat him with such an attitude? Fire Lotus lowered her head like a child who had done something wrong. It's fine. Qin Feiyang smiled and said. The third floor. Apart from the hall, there were many more rooms. These rooms were specially set up for the distinguished guests of the Treasure Pavilion. With the VIP rooms, the hall was naturally much smaller. It wasn't even half the size of the first and second floor. Similarly, there were only 100 people on the third floor. But without exception, those who dared to enter the third floor were all people with status, power, or wealth. Among them, there were a dozen or so disciples of the Nine Heaven Palace. They were all war gods and above. This was really like the saying, war gods were as common as dogs. But on the third floor, Qin Feiyang didn't see the man in the fire robe. But he didn't deliberately look for him. He took Fire Lotus and wandered around. The items on the third floor were of a higher grade than the items on the second floor. For example, divine arts were all high-grade divine arts. Divine weapons were also high-grade divine weapons. Qin Feiyang hadn't seen many herbs before. Among them were the herbs for the Divine Life Pill, Divine Power Pill, and Life Pill. However, every single one of them was ridiculously expensive. The Divine Life Pill had 9 herbs in total. The Life Pill and Divine Power Pill had 5 herbs each. And the cheapest herb was 100,000 divine crystals. The most expensive herb was even 1,000,000 divine crystals. Qin Feiyang said, Great-grandmother, don't cultivate for now. Help me count the Guo family's treasures. I might need them later. Okay. Tantai Li responded. She woke everyone up and started to get busy. Qin Feiyang walked around for a while and couldn't help but frown. Other than the herbs for the Divine Life Pill, Divine Power Pill, and Life Pill, there were also some herbs for the Dead Spirit Barrier Breaking Pill, Heavenly Dust Divine Pill, for Symbols Limitless Pill, and Dragon's Soul Primordial Spirit Pill. It seems that I can only go to the auction house. Qin Feiyang muttered and was about to take the Fire Lotus to the auction house. But at this moment, a familiar figure came up the stairs. It was the man in the fire robe. But seeing Qin Feiyang, the man in the fire robe just smiled and walked into the hall. He walked to a counter and asked the staff member with a smile, Do you accept dragon's blood here? As soon as the voice sounded, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. Dragon's blood. Everyone looked at the man in the fire robe in unison. Qin Feiyang was about to go downstairs, but when he heard this, he immediately stopped and turned to look at the man in the fire robe. The staff member was also a little confused. Do you accept it or not? Seeing that the staff member didn't answer, the man in the fire robe asked again with a smile. Yes, yes, yes. The staff member came back to his senses and quickly nodded. He looked at the man in the fire robe and asked, Young master, what kind of dragon's blood is it? Is it essence blood or ordinary dragon's blood? The man in the fire robe said, It's not essence blood, just ordinary dragon's blood. As for what dragon's blood it is, it's none of your business. Ordinary dragon's blood? The staff member was stunned and shook his head, Then I don't want it. And the others also showed a trace of disappointment on their faces. Hearing this, the man in the fire robe shook his head disappointedly and turned to leave. Qin Feiyang was now standing at the door of the third floor. Just as the man in the fire robe passed by him, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly and he reached out to stop the man in the fire robe. Brother, what's the matter? The man in the fire robe was stunned and asked with a smile. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Brother, can I have a word with you? Sure. I happen to be going to the auction house. Why don't we go there and talk slowly? The man in the fire robe asked. My pleasure. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. Please. The man in the fire robe stretched out his hand and smiled. Please. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and went downstairs with Fire Lotus. Wait. But suddenly, a young man ran out of the hall and called out to the three. Qin Feiyang and the others stopped and turned to look. The young man was about 27 or 28 years old. He was short, only about 1.6 meters tall. He had a shifty-looking face, but there was a hint of shrewdness in his eyes. Qin Feiyang looked at the young man's chest and his pupils shrank slightly. There was a flame pattern on this person's clothes. This meant that this person was a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. The man in the fire robe smiled and asked, Is there something you need? The young man ran in front of the man in the fire robe and said with a flattering smile, This one is Pengen, may I know brother's name? The man in the fire robe was stunned and looked up with a smile, It's rude to ask for a name as soon as you come up. Pengen was stunned and smiled apologetically, This one is rude, please forgive me. It's fine. Just say what you need. The man in the fire robe laughed. Pengen looked at Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus and said, Is it convenient? Seeing this, Qin Feiyang tactfully took Huolian and turned around to walk towards the second floor. The man in the fire robe looked at the two of them and said to Pengen, Can you say it now? Pengen said in a low voice, May I ask, brother, do you really have dragon blood in your body? Of course. The man in the fire robe nodded. Pengen curiously asked, Then where did you get this dragon blood? The man in the fire robe frowned. Pengen smiled, Brother, what do you think? I'll use 10 soul stones to buy this information from you. 10 soul stones? The man in the fire robe was stunned, then shook his head and turned to go downstairs. 100 soul stones. Seeing this, Pengen hurriedly said. But the man in the fire robe just shook his head and smiled, completely ignoring him. Pengen was anxious and angry, and said angrily, Brother, don't be ungrateful, do you know who I am? I'm a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. So what? The man in the fire robe smiled faintly. Pengen was a little angry. He stepped in front of the man in the fire robe and said in a deep voice, Don't be so shameless. Get out of the way. The man in the fire robe raised his eyebrows and said indifferently, What if I don't? Pengen looked at the man in the fire robe with a provocative face. The man in the fire robe frowned, and the atmosphere gradually became serious. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus were also standing at the stairs, looking at the arrogant Pengen with a trace of disgust in their eyes. Literature Museum. Chapter 1950. Fire Lotus secretly said, "This person is so annoying." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice, "But he is also a smart person." Smart? Fire Lotus frowned. Why was she praising him instead? Qin Feiyang laughed, "To be able to think of so many things from a drop of dragon blood, if this isn't smart, then what is?" Think of what? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Then what do you think I want to do with this person? Qin Feiyang asked back. I haven't thought about it. Fire Lotus shook her head. Actually, I also want to ask him about the origin of the dragon blood. Think about it, the dragon blood in his body can't have appeared out of thin air. It must have been obtained from a divine dragon. And although ordinary dragon blood doesn't have much attraction to everyone, a real divine dragon is something that everyone will covet. Qin Feiyang laughed. So that's how it is. Fire Lotus nodded in realization. Qin Feiyang continued, "Of course, a divine dragon is more valuable to us." What do you mean? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Dragon Soul Primordial Spirit Pill. The first medicinal ingredient of this pill is the divine dragon's soul. Qin Feiyang said. Fire Lotus was shocked when she heard this, and secretly said, "You want to hunt a divine dragon?" Qin Feiyang laughed, "If there is such an opportunity, I will definitely not let it go." Hunt a divine dragon, Fire Lotus's heart was in disbelief. This guy really dared to dream. Qin Feiyang said, "I really hope that the divine dragon this person knows is a perfect war god." Why must it be a perfect war god? Fire Lotus was puzzled. Because the dragon soul needed for this dragon soul primordial spirit pill must be at least a perfect divine dragon soul. Qin Feiyang laughed. It's getting crazier and crazier. Fire Lotus shook her head. A perfect war god divine dragon was only one step away from becoming a half-step divine lord. The flame-clothed man and Penguin were still in a deadlock. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows, took a step forward, and pushed Penguin away, saying, "You're not done yet, are you? You dare to push me?" Penguin looked at Qin Feiyang in disbelief. "Who do you think you are? So what if you're a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace? You don't even dare to push. Don't take yourself too seriously." Qin Feiyang snorted coldly and ignored Penguin. He looked at the flame-robed man and said with a smile, "Brother, let's go." The man in the fiery robe laughed and strode down. Qin Feiyang also turned around and left. From beginning to end, he never looked at Penguin again. Bastard, bastard, this is unforgivable." Penguin was so angry that he gritted his teeth and smoke came out of his head. As a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace, he was actually disregarded and humiliated by two nameless people? This was intolerable. Boom! He raised his fist and swooped down, aiming for Qin Feiyang and the flame-clothed man. Qin Feiyang frowned. Although this person was smart, he was not tactful at all. Stop. This is the treasure pavilion. No one is allowed to mess around. But just as Qin Feiyang was about to make a move, a staff member ran out and shouted at Penguin. Penguin stopped abruptly, his face turning green and red. Qin Feiyang did not make a move. He followed the flame-clothed man and walked to Fire Lotus. Penguin shouted, "The three of you, listen carefully. This time, you've provoked someone you shouldn't have." Fire Lotus said with a smile, "I really can't tell. How big of a background do you have?" "I don't have any background, but there's someone whose name can scare you to death." Penguin sneered. Qin Feiyang and the other two stared blankly for a moment. They looked at each other before turning their heads to look at Penguin, who was standing on top of the stage, showing off his prowess. The flame-clothed man laughed, "This is interesting. Then, tell me, who is this person?" "Feng Zijuan." Penguin said word by word. "Feng Zijuan." The flame-clothed man's pupils shrank when he heard this name. Qin Feiyang noticed the change in the flame-clothed man's expression. There was a trace of suspicion in his eyes. Who was this Feng Zijuan? How could he make this person change his expression? Are you scared? Penguin sneered at the three of them. Huh, scared, of course I'm scared. Who in Sky Dragon City doesn't know Feng Zijuan's name? But even if it's Feng Zijuan, he can't be so domineering. The man in the flaming robe laughed out loud. He turned around and walked to the first floor without looking back. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus looked at each other and quickly followed. Preposterous. Just you wait. Penguin roared and also ran to the first floor. Auction house. Located in the basement of the first floor, there were a total of 2 floors. The first floor was the auction house hall. The second floor was the private room. After the flame-clothed man entered the auction house, he directly brought Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus into private room number 9. The space of the private room was not big, about 5 to 6 meters, but the decoration was very luxurious and very expensive. The flame-clothed man pointed to the chair beside the tea table and said with a smile, "Please sit." Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus sat side by side on a double chair and looked outside. In front of them was a transparent floor-to-ceiling window. Through the floor-to-ceiling window, one could see the auction house outside clearly. At this moment, on the auction stage stood a white-clothed woman. She looked to be in her 20s, but the aura she emitted was extremely terrifying. According to Qin Feiyang's judgment, she should be comparable to Uncle Yuan. In other words, this woman was a half-step divine lord. And in front of the white-clothed woman, there was a long metal box. Inside, there was a 3-foot-long battle sword. Although the battle sword had not awakened, but from the sharpness it released, one could tell that it was a supreme-grade divine artifact at a glance. The people around the auction stage, as well as the people in the private rooms on the second floor, were all competing to bid. There's a good saying, there's no evil businessmen. Generally, precious things will be auctioned here by the treasure pavilion. So, if you want to find good things, you have to come here. The flame-clothed man said with a smile as he brewed tea. Qin Feiyang nodded and retracted his gaze. Looking at the flame-clothed man, he cupped his hands and smiled. "I'm Jiang Haotian, and this is my sister, Fire Lotus Jiang. Brother, I wonder if you can tell us your name?" Hua Yi. Hua as in flame, Yi as in easy. The flame-clothed man smiled. Hua Yi, Qin Feiyang muttered. This name was also very unfamiliar. It seemed like he had never seen this person before. Hua Yi poured 2 cups of tea and retreated to the front of Qin Feiyang and smiled. "It should be the first time you two have come to Sky Dragon City." Qin Feiyang nodded. Hua Yi held the teacup and took a sip. "Sky Dragon City is a place where dragons and snakes mix together. You two must be careful in the future. Thank you for your concern, Brother Hua." "Brother Hua, may I ask who this Feng Zijuan is?" Qin Feiyang asked curiously. "This Feng Zijuan has a great background. I wonder if Brother Jiang has heard of the 9 Heavens Palace's Resource Hall Master?" Hua Yi asked. "Resource Hall Master? Isn't that young noble Feng's grandfather?" "Wait. Young noble Feng? Feng Zijuan? Could it be?" Qin Feiyang's heart trembled. He smiled at Hua Yi. "I've heard of him." Hua Yi said, "This Feng Zijuan is the Resource Hall Master's grandson." As expected. Qin Feiyang muttered inwardly. The 2 of them were blood brothers. Moreover, this Feng Zijuan should be the big brother that young noble Feng mentioned. Not only does Feng Zijuan have a powerful family background, but he also has extraordinary talent. Do you know his cultivation? Early Divine Monarch Realm. Hua Yi said. So strong. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Early Divine Monarch Realm was even more terrifying than Yuan Bo, because of his strength and background. Many disciples in 9 Heavens Palace want to curry favor with him. That penguin just now should be one of them. Hua Yi said. Qin Feiyang asked, in other words, this penguin is looking for information on behalf of Feng Zijuan? That's right. Hua Yi nodded, then shook his head and said, let's not talk about this for now. Let's talk about your purpose of looking for me. Qin Feiyang smiled. Brother Hua is such a smart person, you should have thought of it. It's just as I expected. Hua Yi smiled and pondered for a moment before saying, I can tell Brother Jiang the whereabouts of that divine dragon, but Brother Jiang has to agree to one condition. Speak. Qin Feiyang said. Hua Yi said, I wonder if Brother Jiang knows about Nine Heavens Palace's disciple recruitment? I know a thing or two. Qin Feiyang said. Then, does Brother Jiang want to enter Nine Heavens Palace? Hua Yi asked. I have this thought. Qin Feiyang nodded. Hua Yi smiled, that's good. My condition is that when the time comes to participate in the assessment, Brother Jiang can help me. You also want to enter Nine Heavens Palace? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Hua Yi smiled and said, who in my generation doesn't desire a cultivation holy land like Nine Heavens Palace? That's true. Qin Feiyang nodded and pondered for a moment before saying with a smile, saying help is too polite. We should take care of each other and support each other. Hua Yi was stunned for a moment before he laughed heartily. Yes, 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 we should take care of each other and support each other. Qin Feiyang said, then, the matter of the divine dragon? Hua Yi said, in the depths of the Sky Dragon mountain range, there is a place called Black Dragon Lake. There is a black dragon hiding there. I obtained this dragon blood from it. Black Dragon Lake, Black Dragon, Qin Feiyang murmured, asking, how is its strength? Very strong. Half-step divine monarch realm. Hua Yi said solemnly. Good. Qin Feiyang was overjoyed. A half-step divine monarch realm dragon soul had already surpassed the minimum requirement of the dragon soul primordial spirit pill. Hua Yi looked at Qin Feiyang's reaction and frowned. Brother Jiang, you're not going to hunt it, are you? It depends on the situation. Qin Feiyang smiled. Even if he found the divine dragon, he still lacked two other herbs, the dragon god flower and the primordial spirit lotus. Thus, he was not in a hurry to hunt the divine dragon. Moreover, a half-step divine monarch realm divine dragon was not so easy to hunt. While the two were conversing, the auction of the battle sword outside had also ended. The final price was 30 million divine crystals. A supreme-grade divine artifact was only sold for 30 million divine crystals. This made Qin Feiyang somewhat speechless. It seemed that supreme-grade divine artifacts could only be considered average in this Sky Dragon city. The next treasure to be auctioned, I believe many people will not be unfamiliar with it. The white-clothed woman standing on the high platform smiled faintly. With a wave of her jade-like hand, a palm-sized purple flame appeared out of thin air. Looking at the purple flame, Qin Feiyang immediately became spirited. At the side, Fire Lotus's eyes were also suffused with a scorching light. Chapter 1951. The purple flame floated in the air, emitting a dazzling divine light. An astonishing heat wave instantly enveloped the entire auction house with the auction stage as the center. Everyone felt as if they were in a sea of fire, sweating profusely. Moreover, there were traces of lightning power flickering on the flame. This was the Nine Suns lightning fire. Qin Feiyang and Hua Yi were quite excited. They didn't expect to encounter this kind of extreme yang fire. I believe that everyone knows the value of this Nine Suns lightning fire even without my special introduction. The starting price is 2 million divine crystals. The highest bidder wins. The auction begins now. The white-clothed woman on the stage smiled. 1 million. 2 million. 3 million. Immediately, the people in the auction house began to bid wildly. Especially the private rooms on the second floor. Listening to their tone, a large number of people were determined to win. I didn't expect to encounter the Nine Suns lightning fire. Hua Yi looked at the purple flame and exclaimed. Qin Feiyang's eyelids twitched. He calmly turned to look at Hua Yi and asked with a smile, Brother Hua, don't tell me you also want this 9 suns lightning fire? Me? Hui was slightly stunned. He shook his head and said with a smile, I do want it a little, but there is a good saying, a gentleman does not take what others love. Thank you very much. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled gratefully. Hui asked suspiciously, but I'm a little curious. What does Brother Jiang want this 9 suns lightning fire for? Qin Feiyang asked, I wonder if Brother Hua has heard of the undead barrier breaking pill? Undead barrier breaking pill? Hui was stunned. He shook his head and said, I've never heard of this kind of pill. Never heard of it? Qin Feiyang was surprised and said, then what about the life pill, divine power pill, divine life pill, heavenly dust pill, for symbols infinite divine pill, and dragon soul primordial spirit pill? Hui was stunned when he heard these pills. Qin Feiyang asked in surprise, Brother Hua has never heard of them? I'm familiar with the God's soul pill, God's power pill, and God's life pill because the treasure pavilion has them. But this heavenly dust divine pill, for symbols infinite divine pill, dragon soul primordial spirit pill, this is the first time I've heard of them. Dare I ask Brother Jiang, what kind of medicinal pills are these? Hui said. This is the first time you've heard of it? Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus looked at each other. Originally, Qin Feiyang thought that such a terrifying place like the ancient realm would definitely have all kinds of medicinal pills. However, he didn't expect that Hui actually didn't know. Didn't this mean that the ancient dimension didn't have these pill formulas? Qin Feiyang asked again, then the potential pill, what about the potential pill? Potential pill? Potential pill? Hui stared blankly for a moment before shaking his head, I've never heard of it either. It seems that even the ancient realm doesn't have some of the pill formulas in the pill scripture. Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. Fire Lotus thought, is there any information about these pills in the old patriarch's memories? No. Originally, I thought that it might be because the old patriarch's status wasn't high and he didn't know about these pills. But I didn't expect that the ancient realm doesn't have them at all. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Fire Lotus smiled and said, then this is a business opportunity. Business opportunity? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Think about it, if these pills were to spread out, how many people would come to snatch them? Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang laughed bitterly and sent a voice transmission. Even though it's true, it's a crime to possess a treasure, and it'll similarly bring about a calamity of death for us. That's true. Fire Lotus nodded and said, but you're not the only one who knows about these pill formulas. Don't forget that Mu Tianyang and the others are also in the ancient realm. Until now, there have been no rumors about these pills. I think Mu Tianyang and the others also understand this and didn't say anything. Qin Feiyang said. Seeing that Qin Feiyang didn't speak for a long time, Hui became more and more curious. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Brother Jiang, you haven't finished speaking? What kind of pills are those? I'm not sure. Qin Feiyang smiled. Not sure. Hui was skeptical. But he was also a smart person. If the other party didn't want to say, it would arouse the other party's disgust. So, he chose to remain silent. Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously, Brother Hua, do you know the specific effects of the 9 suns lightning fire? Since the ancient realm didn't have the undead barrier breaking pill, the 9 suns lightning fire must have other effects. Otherwise, it wouldn't have caused such a crazy scramble. The 9 suns lightning fire is a fire of extreme yang. It's the nemesis of evil things. Existences like the undead are most afraid of this kind of fire. And on this continent, there are countless evil things, so the 9 suns lightning fire can be considered a divine item to ward off evil. However, the biggest use of the 9 suns lightning fire is actually alchemy. Hui smiled. Alchemy? Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. The 9 suns lightning fire can be used as a pill fire. And compared to an ordinary pill fire, using the 9 suns lightning fire to refine pills will not only yield twice the result with half the effort, but the quality of the pills refined will also increase by several times. So, the people participating in the auction are basically alchemists. Hua Yi explained. I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said with a smile, I won't hide it from Brother Hua. In fact, I'm also an alchemist. Alchemist? Hua Yi was slightly taken aback and blushed with shame as he said, then this one really misjudged. I'm just an ordinary alchemist, not worth mentioning. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said with a smile. Brother Jiang is too modest. Although I don't know anything about alchemy, I still know that an alchemist who is interested in the 9 suns lightning fire is not an ordinary person. Hua Yi said with a smile. When Fire Lotus heard this, she covered her mouth and said with a smile, Brother Hua Yi, you really know how to flatter people. Flatter? Hua Yi smiled and didn't say anything else. Qin Feiyang sized up Hua Yi and his eyes flickered. Suddenly, he shook his head and said, Little sister, he's not flattering me. This isn't flattery? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Brother Hua is reminding me that many of the people bidding for the 9 suns lightning fire have status and status. He's telling me to think twice before acting. Qin Feiyang said. When Fire Lotus heard this, she looked at Hua Yi suspiciously and asked, Is that so? But in the face of Fire Lotus's question, Hua Yi only smiled and didn't say anything. Qin Feiyang looked deeply at Hua Yi and patted Fire Lotus's hand, indicating that she shouldn't ask any more questions. Then, he looked at the auction outside. While they were talking, the price of the 9 suns lightning fire had already risen to 20 million divine crystals. Almost no one in the auction outside made a bid. Because this price had already exceeded the limit of what they could bear. At present, only the people in the private rooms on the second floor continued to bid. Those who could enter the private rooms, whether it was strength or financial resources, definitely far surpassed the others. Looking at the skyrocketing price, Fire Lotus was a little anxious. She secretly said, Qin Dage, if it really doesn't work, can we think of another way? She knew about Qin Feiyang's situation. He had just entered the ancient world and didn't have many divine crystals on him. Such a high price was really too difficult for him. Don't worry, I'll do what I can. Qin Feiyang secretly comforted her and said, Great-grandmother, have you checked? Yes, I have. Tan Tai Li's voice sounded in his mind. Then how many divine crystals do we have? Qin Feiyang secretly asked. We have more than 2 million. Tan Tai Li said. It's far from enough. Qin Feiyang secretly sighed. More than 2 million was not even enough to make up a fraction. As for divine weapons and divine arts, they are of the lowest level and have no value. But there are a lot of medicinal herbs and pills. For example, divine soul pill, divine power pill, divine life pill. We have all the medicinal herbs for these pills. Tan Tai Li said again. I know. Thank you for your hard work. Qin Feiyang secretly said, then lowered his head and pondered. The price of the 9 suns lightning fire was still rising. He didn't know what the final price would be. So even if he sold all the treasures he plundered from the Guo family, it would definitely not be enough. As for himself, he had given away most of his divine weapons. He didn't have anything valuable. Then, only pills like potential pills were left. But once these pills appeared, there would be endless trouble and even a bloody storm. What should he do? Seeing that Qin Feiyang hadn't made a bid, Hua Yi smiled and said, Brother Jiang, if you encounter any difficulties, you can tell me. Maybe I can help you. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He raised his head and looked at Hua Yi. Why do you want to help me? We can meet several times in a day. Now, we're even sitting here, drinking tea and chatting. This is fate. Hua Yi said with a smile. Huolian raised her eyebrows imperceptibly and sent a voice transmission, Big Brother Qin, isn't this person too enthusiastic? What do you think? Qin Feiyang secretly said. One who is unaccountably solicitous is hiding evil intentions. Fire Lotus said. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said, I do need to take precautions. First, he reminded him not to buy the Chaos Origin Divine Art on the 3rd floor. Just now, he secretly reminded him not to compete with others for the 9 Suns Lightning Fire if he didn't need it. And now, he was actually going to help him. Frankly speaking, even he couldn't stand Hui Yi's enthusiasm. It wasn't that Hui Yi really had ulterior motives. Perhaps this person was really warm-hearted. But after a long time of scheming, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be vigilant. After all, you may know a person for a long time without understanding his heart. It was never wrong to be cautious. I have a total of about 100 million divine crystals here. If Brother Jiang doesn't mind, you can take it. Hui Yi took out a fiery red universe ring that looked like it was made of lava and placed it on the tea table. 100 million. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus were shocked. 100 million divine gems was an astronomical figure to them. Fire Lotus said, Qin Dage, you have to be careful. They had just met by chance, but he actually gave them 100 million divine crystals. There was definitely something fishy going on. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Brother Hua, if you have any needs or conditions, you can tell me directly. Conditions? Hui Yi shook his head and said helplessly, Brother Jiang, you think too much of a person's heart. How can there be so many schemes in this world? I just want to help Brother Jiang because we feel like old friends at first sight. Chapter 1952. Hearing Hui Yi's words, Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus looked at each other. They couldn't help but feel ashamed in their hearts. Hui Yi looked at the two of them and smiled bitterly. Helping people and being misunderstood is a bit frustrating. Of course, I don't blame you. After all, in this world, there are too many people who try to deceive each other. It's understandable. Qin Feiyang felt even more embarrassed. He cupped his fists and said, Thank you for your understanding, Brother Hua. Hui Yi waved his hand and said, Let's not talk about this. How about this? These 100 million divine crystals can be considered as a loan from you. Write an IOU and return it to me in full. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded. He took out a brush, ink, paper, and inkstone, quickly wrote an IOU and pressed his fingerprint on it. Hui Yi also put it away with a smile, 50 million. 50, 1 million. The bidding continued. With this 100 million divine crystals, Qin Feiyang finally had some confidence. However, he wasn't in a hurry to call out a price. The price soared all the way to 70 million divine crystals. At this time, there were only a few people bidding 70 million divine crystals. Even a monstrous alchemist from 9 Heavens Palace would find it difficult to bear. Brother Jiang, you can make your move now. Hui Yi smiled. Qin Feiyang nodded. He glanced around the auction house and said indifferently, 71 million. Everyone present was stunned. Before, although everyone was bidding, it was basically 10,000 or 100,000. But now, he actually increased the price by 1 million. Which nouveau riche was? Qin Feiyang's bid was in fact indirectly telling others that he was determined to obtain the 9 Suns Lightning Fire. If they knew what was good for them, they wouldn't compete anymore. Sure enough. After he called out a price, the audience quieted down. The few people who were still bidding also fell silent one after another. At the same time. Private room number 1. A purple-robed young man was leaning against a chair with one hand supporting his head. He had a lazy look on his face. Beside him stood a short man with shifty eyes. This person was Peng'an, who had formed a grudge with Qin Feiyang's group of 3. This voice, when Qin Feiyang spoke, Peng'an's expression slightly froze. Then, a sneer crept up his eyes as he looked at the purple-robed young man and said, Senior Brother Jun, of the 3 people I mentioned just now, this person is one of them. The purple-robed young man was taken aback and asked. I'm sure. I remember his voice. Peng'an said. The purple-clothed youth raised his head and looked at the private room where Qin Feiyang and the other two were in. His eyes flickered. Although he could see the outside, he couldn't see the situation inside the rooms from the outside. Therefore, the purple-robed didn't really see Feiyang's group. The woman in white asked loudly, Private room 9 bid 71 million divine crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to raise the price? There was Deity 71,010,000. Suddenly. June, his voice s to he's. 72 million. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and directly raised the price by 1 million. Hearing this, the man glared angrily at Qin Feiyang's room and fell silent. 72 million. Is there anyone else? The white-robed woman standing on the high platform looked around and asked again. Time passed by. Just as the white-robed woman was about to announce the result, the purple-robed young man in the first room smiled faintly and said, Peng'an, play with them. Okay. Peng'an was overjoyed. He was waiting for this sentence. Then, without hesitation, he said, 80 million. What? 80 million? He just raised the price by 8 million. It's obvious that he's going against the people in the 9th room. It seems that there's going to be a good show. As soon as Peng'an's voice fell, the auction house became noisy. But Qin Feiyang's group of 3 couldn't help but frown. Hui smiled and said, Brother Jiang, did you hear that? It's Peng'an's voice. Qin Feiyang nodded. Peng'an is just an ordinary disciple. He doesn't have the financial resources at all. I think someone must be helping him. That person should be Feng Zijuan. Hui said. Feng Zijuan. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked at the first room, saying, Is Feng Zijuan also an alchemist? He's not. Hui shook his head. If he's not an alchemist, why did he interfere? Fire Lotus was very angry. It's obvious that they want to take revenge on me. Hui shook his head and sighed. He looked at Qin Feiyang and Hui apologetically. I'm really sorry to implicate you. What are you talking about? At that time, I also humiliated Peng'an. With his personality, he definitely won't let me go. Qin Feiyang said. Hui sighed, no matter what, this matter started because of me. It's okay. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. 80 million, is there anyone else? The woman in white was full of smiles. As a businessman, what she liked to see the most was no doubt this kind of scene of dragons and tigers fighting. 1 million. Qin Feiyang said. Didn't you increase by 1 million just now? Why is it 10,000 now? If you don't have the strength, don't come and compete, lest you make a fool of yourself. 81 million. Peng'an's voice sounded immediately, and he also humiliated Qin Feiyang. The crowd also roared with laughter. Especially those people who were forcibly suppressed by Qin Feiyang before, the gloating on their faces was undisguised. Snatch. Now you've met someone who's more awesome than you. This is retribution. 81 million. Qin Feiyang said again, his tone was calm. He can still endure it, it seems that this person's temperament is not bad. Feng Zijuan murmured, still leaning on the chair with a lazy look, as if nothing could move him. Senior brother June, you think too highly of him. He must be pretending to be calm now, stubbornly holding on. Peng'an said. In that case, let's test his bottom line. Feng Zijuan smiled faintly. Okay. Peng'an nodded and shouted, 90 million. Gasp. As soon as this voice sounded, the people present couldn't help but gasp. 90 million divine crystals, this person was really generous. And the woman in white on the high platform was already blooming with joy. Although the 9 suns thunder fire was a rare treasure of heaven and earth, 90 million had far exceeded its value. Moreover, The most important thing was that the price would exceed 100 million sooner or later if it continued to compete like this. Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang and couldn't help but say, "Brother, why don't we just forget it? Even if they won, it would only benefit the treasure pavilion. It was not worth it." Feng Zijuan, Peng'an, Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered, and suddenly smiled. 91 million. What? He dares to raise the price? Everyone was in disbelief. Which rich man was this, to be so bold? It seemed that he was really determined to get the 9 Suns Thunder Fire. Peng'an was also dumbfounded, and looked at Feng Zijuan at a loss. Feng Zijuan glanced at the 9th private room and remained silent. Interesting. Gradually, the corner of his mouth raised slightly, and he said with a faint smile, 100 million, 100 million. Oh my God. One is more terrifying than the other. Everyone was shocked. Wait. This voice, it's Feng Zijuan. So it's him. After recognizing Feng Zijuan, everyone once again looked at the private room where Qin Feiyang and the other two were, and the gloating in their eyes was even more intense. He actually dared to offend Feng Zijuan? This person was really blind. Hua Yi frowned, looked at Qin Feiyang, and said, "Brother Jiang, Feng Zijuan personally bid, which means that he is serious. I think it's better." Although he didn't finish, as long as one wasn't a fool, they could understand that Hua Yi wanted him to give up. "Brother, this Feng Zijuan is the grandson of the 9 Heavens Palace's resource hall master. His wealth is definitely not something we can compare with. Let's listen to Brother Hua Yi, and think of another way." Fire Lotus also said. Qin Feiyang was silent. "Not long ago on the 3rd floor, weren't you all very arrogant? What? Have you become mute now? Huh, with this little ability, you dare to go against us, you really overestimate yourself." Peng'an laughed, full of sarcasm. Fire Lotus hurriedly said, "Brother, he is provoking you, don't be fooled. Brother Jiang, think twice. If you don't have enough divine crystals to pay, not only will you lose face, the treasure pavilion will not let you go easily." Hua Yi also had a worried look. Qin Feiyang's eyes narrowed slightly, and said, 10-10-000. What? Knowing that it's Feng Zijuan, he still dares to continue bidding? Who is this guy? Everyone was shocked. Feng Zijuan was also quite surprised. He personally spoke in order to intimidate. But obviously, the other party was not frightened by him. It seemed that this person was not a simple person. Feng Zijuan smiled playfully, looked at Peng'an and said, "You continue, raise the price to 200 million. 200 million? Peng'an was shocked and hurriedly said, "Senior Brother Jun, what if they suddenly don't want it?" 200 million was not a small amount. Even Feng Zijuan would not be able to take out so much. That won't happen. Even now, he's still raising the price. He definitely needs this 9 Suns Thunder Fire. Since that's the case, then of course I have to make them pay a price and let them know the consequences of offending me, Feng Zijuan. Feng Zijuan said with a faint smile. Senior Brother Jun is wise. Peng'an gave a thumbs up, his face full of admiration, then puffed out his chest and raised his back, valiantly shouting, 110 million. Qin Feiyang continued, 110,000, 120 million. 121,100, 130 million. 131,100,000. At this moment, the entire auction house was dead silent. Only Qin Feiyang and Peng'an's bidding continued to reverberate in the auction house. This invisible battle was getting more and more intense. One after another, astronomical figures kept appearing, making everyone numb. However, Hua Yi, Fire Lotus, looking at Qin Feiyang who was crazily raising the price, was burning with anxiety. Especially Fire Lotus. She knew better than anyone how many divine crystals Qin Feiyang had, and it had far exceeded the amount she had. This was complete nonsense. But at the same time, she was very touched. Because everything Qin Feiyang did was for her. Chapter 1953. However, Qin Feiyang, on the other hand, remained calm and composed, without the slightest bit of panic or nervousness. 170 million. 171 million. 180 million. 181 million. 190 million. 110,000. As he continued to bid, the sinister smile on Pang An's face became wider and wider. Increase it with all your might. There will be a time for you to cry later. 200 million. Just as Qin Feiyang finished shouting, Pang An became high-spirited and roared without hesitation, 200 million. It actually broke through the 200 million mark. These two people are really crazy. There's also the treasure pavilion. This time, they've made a huge profit. Everyone watched this scene with their mouths agape. The woman in white on the high platform had a round smile on her face. Moreover, this matter had already caused a sensation outside, and even spread to the treasure pavilion. Like an invisible storm, it spread to the various districts of the Sky Dragon City. Everyone rushed towards the treasure pavilion to watch the show. 200 million, continue. Pang An had already completely inflated as he continued to clamor. Brother from private room number 9, you've already fought to this point, don't admit defeat. That's right. A man lives with a breath, a tree lives with a piece of skin. You have to be strong and fight to the end. The auction house was in an uproar. Those who were watching the show naturally wished for the world to be in chaos. The more exciting it was, the more interesting it was. Hui and Fire Lotus did not say a word. In their opinion, Qin Feiyang had already lost his mind, and no matter how much they said, he would not listen. Well said. A man lives with a breath, a tree lives with a piece of skin. As a man, how can you retreat? Feng Zijun, let me see, how much ability do you have? Do you have the capital to be arrogant? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, and said, 300 million. Crash. As soon as these words were spoken, it immediately caused a huge uproar. 300 million. Who the hell is this person? Not only did he openly call out to Feng Zijun, he even increased the bid by 100 million. This is too terrifying. The shock in everyone's hearts could no longer be described with words. When Fire Lotus and Hui heard Qin Feiyang's words, they almost fainted. 300 million divine gems. This guy was really crazy. It was over. If he couldn't pay that many divine crystals later, he probably wouldn't be able to walk out of the auction house. Private room number 1. At this moment, Pang An's eyes were also wide open in anger, so much so that his eyeballs were about to pop out. What kind of concept was 300 million? An ordinary disciple like him would never see so many divine crystals in his entire life. Yet, the other party had said it so casually. Could it be that he had kicked an iron plate this time and provoked someone he shouldn't have provoked? Simultaneously, Feng Zijun also sat up straight, and the laziness on his face was swept away, replaced by a gloomy expression. His hands were tightly clenched together. Pang An came back to his senses and turned to look at Feng Zijun. When he saw Feng Zijun's expression, his eyes trembled slightly. He carefully said, "Senior brother Jun, let's just forget about it." Forget it? Didn't you hear what he said? A man lives on his last breath, and a tree lives on its skin. As a man, how can you back down? If I shrink back now, won't I become a joke in the world? He is no longer bidding for the 9 suns lightning fire, this is a naked provocation. Feng Zijun said sternly. But, Pang An wanted to say something but hesitated. Provoking me, is it? Okay, I'll play with you to the end. 400 million. Feng Zijun walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looked at Qin Feiyang's private room, and shouted aggressively. Crazy, they're all crazy. 400 million, if it's given to me, it's enough for me to live a carefree life. These two are simply prodigals. Everyone lamented and was completely numb. They looked at private room number 9, waiting for Qin Feiyang's voice to sound. After waiting for a long time, Qin Feiyang's laughter finally sounded. Listening to this laughter, there's no fluctuation. It seems that he will continue to raise the price. People muttered. But just as this thought crawled up in everyone's mind, Qin Feiyang's laughter sounded once again. Your Excellency is amazing, I admit defeat. What? Give up? Everyone was looking forward to it, but when they suddenly heard Qin Feiyang's words, they were all stunned. Peng An and Feng Zijun were also stunned. Didn't they want to fight to the end? Why did they give up? At the same time, Fire Lotus and Hui Yi also looked at each other in dismay. What was going on? However, both of them heaved a sigh of relief. If they continued to fight, it would definitely not end well in the end. Because they simply couldn't take out so many soul stones. Qin Feiyang turned his head to look at the two of them, and laughed. Do you really think that I have lost my mind? Haven't you? Fire Lotus asked. Anyone with a discerning eye can see that Feng Zijun's actions are deliberately raising the price, causing us to lose a large amount of divine crystal. However, he's looking for the wrong target. If it were anyone else, in the face of such unreasonable clamor, they might really lose their mind. But I won't. So I beat him at his own game and took the initiative to clamor at him. I thought that with his arrogance and conceit, he would definitely continue to fight with me. The result was just as I expected. At the same time, it also reflected that although this person is talented, his mind and temperament are not good. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be so easily angered by me. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. So it's like that. Fire Lotus and Hui Yi finally understood. It turned out that they had been worrying for nothing. Aren't you very arrogant? You admit defeat just like that? Sure enough, compared to senior brother June, you are just a slag. No, you can't even be considered a slag. Peng An's loud laughter suddenly resounded in the auction house. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. The entire auction house was also in an uproar. Everyone discussed animatedly, looking at the private room Qin Feiyang was in, their eyes full of ridicule. Feng Zijun's face was also full of pride. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Feng Zijun, think about it carefully, did you really win? What do you mean by that? Everyone was stunned, their faces full of suspicion. Feng Zijun also frowned. Suddenly, his hands suddenly clenched, making cracking sounds. His face was also gloomy to the extreme. Seeing the situation, Peng An moved to Feng Zijun's side and said with a flattering smile, Senior brother June, you won in the first place. Everyone saw it for themselves. What are you still angry for? Shut up. Feng Zijun slapped Peng An's face fiercely. Peng An immediately smashed onto the ground beside him like a dead dog. His face was deformed, and he was in so much pain that he cried for his parents. Using 400 million divine crystals to buy a cluster of 9 sun lightning fire. I can only say that I admire Feng Zijun's courage. Treasure Pavilion, you don't need to thank me because Feng Zijun is willing to do this. Qin Feiyang's laughter sounded out once more. The auction house set off a huge uproar once more. Yeah. On the surface, it looks like Feng Zijun won. But thinking about it carefully, that's not the case at all. This is simply a trap to lure Feng Zijun into it. To think that this Feng Zijun and Peng An were still smug. Actually, they themselves are the biggest idiots. Even a freak like Feng Zijun was schemed against so tightly. This person's methods are profound. Being reminded by Qin Feiyang like this, everyone came to their senses. Their gazes also all shifted to the number 1 private room. At this very moment, Feng Zijun was mad with hatred. Although the people outside could not see him, he could see the people outside clearly. Looking at those pairs of eyes full of ridicule, he wanted to find a hole to crawl into. Originally wanted to scheme against the other party, but the result was that he was schemed against instead. The most embarrassing thing was that not only did he not notice it, he even had a smug attitude. My God! As a freak of Jyotian Palace, how could he do such a stupid thing? Now that he thought about it, he felt that he had no face left. In his heart, the resentment and hatred towards Qin Feiyang was also uncontrollable. Who are you? If you have the guts, say your name. Feng Zijuan stared at the floor-to-ceiling window of the number 9 private room and said gloomily. We will meet again. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. I look forward to our next meeting. Feng Zijuan gritted his teeth and said, then turned around and left angrily. Senior brother Jun. Peng An hurriedly chased after him. It was fine if Peng An did not speak. Once he spoke, Feng Zijuan suddenly seemed to have found a vent. He turned around and kicked Peng An's lower abdomen. Ouch! Peng An flew out on the spot and smashed into the floor-to-ceiling window. It was unknown what the floor-to-ceiling window was made of, but it did not break. But tragedy befell Peng An. He spat out a mouthful of blood and slid down from the floor-to-ceiling window. He knelt on the ground, clutching his lower abdomen, and howled miserably like a pig being slaughtered. So pitiful. Hearing Peng An scream, Fire Lotus laughed happily. This is called evil people will be dealt with by evil people. Qin Feiyang smiled, got up and looked at Fire Lotus, and said, I have something to deal with. You stay here and chat with Brother Hua for a while. Fire Lotus glanced at Hui Yi, and nodded to Qin Feiyang, okay. Brother Hua, let's meet again later. Qin Feiyang said. Hui Yi smiled and nodded, and a glimmer of light flashed in the depths of his eyes. Qin Feiyang turned and walked out of the private room. He looked at the corridor on both sides. Seeing that there was no one, he closed the door of the private room and disappeared in an instant. Inside the private room, Hui Yi looked at Fire Lotus and smiled. Miss Fire Lotus, your big brother is a bit scary. Scary? Fire Lotus was startled. Without anyone knowing, he set a trap for Feng Zijun, and made Feng Zijun lose all his face. He even took care of Peng An while he was at it. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone, isn't that scary? Hui Yi shook his head speechlessly. Fire Lotus thought for a moment, and laughed happily. Hearing you say that, it seems to be true. Don't be modest. Your big brother, no, it should be said that you siblings are not ordinary people. Hui Yi laughed. Fire Lotus said, isn't big brother Hui Yi the same? Haha, Hui Yi laughed heartily, picked up his teacup, and drank his tea while paying attention to the auction outside. And the auction house welcomed the next auction item. However, everyone was still talking about the matter between Qin Feiyang and Feng Zijun, and it seemed that it would be difficult to calm down in a short period of time. P.S. Old Meng has resumed updating. Everyone should also move their small hands and vote the votes in their hands. Thank you very much. Chapter 1954. At the same time that Qin Feiyang disappeared, Feng Zijun angrily walked out of private room number 1. Peng An was still howling inside. But there was already a woman in red waiting outside. This woman was a staff member of the Treasure Pavilion. Seeing Feng Zijun come out, the woman in red immediately went up and smiled. Young Master Feng, please pay the bill in the VIP room. Seeing the smile on the woman's face, the anger in Feng Zijun's heart burned again. The woman's smile was actually very sincere, but in Feng Zijun's eyes, it was like she was mocking him. Move. Feng Zijun looked at the woman coldly and said. The woman in red paused and said patiently, Young Master Feng, you're a frequent customer of the Treasure Pavilion, so you naturally know our rules. After the auction, you have to pay the divine crystals in person before you can leave. Feng Zijun's eyes were gloomy as he clenched his fists tightly. The woman in red lowered her head and said, Young Master, please don't make it difficult for me. Who? Feng Zijun took a deep breath and said, I don't have that many divine crystals on me right now, I'll pay after I return to Empyrean Palace. This, the woman in red frowned, unable to decide. Seeing this, the anger in Feng Zijuan's heart burned again as he said angrily, I, Feng Zijuan, am a monster of Empyrean Palace, and I'm famous in Sky Dragon City. Will I go back on my words? No, no, no. The woman in red quickly waved her hand and said, the Treasure Pavilion believes in young master's character, but the amount involved this time is too large. I really don't dare to make this decision. Feng Zijuan said, if you can't make this decision, then let Shengguan Qiu do it. Okay. I'll get someone to call the steward. The woman in red nodded and said loudly, guards. A guard ran over. The woman in red said, take young Master Feng to VIP room number 1 and treat him well. Okay. The guard nodded and then looked at Feng Zijuan with a smile, young master, this way please. Humph. Feng Zijuan snorted coldly and walked towards the 3rd floor of the Treasure Pavilion. The woman in red also quickly entered the auction house and ran up the auction stage, whispering a few words into the woman in white's ear. Everything is within my expectations. The woman in white chuckled and said, help me auction it first. I'll go take a look. Yes. The woman in red nodded. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. I have some matters to attend to. However, the auction will not stop. Everyone, please continue. The woman in white looked around at the people in the auction house. She smiled and said. Then, she turned around and left quickly. Why did you leave halfway? Is there even a need to ask? It must be because of Feng Zijuan. 400 million divine gems. Even Feng Zijuan can't afford that. Feng Zijuan has lost a lot of face this time. It doesn't matter if he loses face. The most important thing is his parents and grandfather. His parents are the enforcement elders of Nine Heavens Palace, and his grandfather is the hall master of Nine Heavens Palace's resource hall. When has he ever embarrassed himself like this? When they receive the news, Feng Zijuan will definitely suffer. Everyone whispered in each other's ears, their faces full of ridicule. 3rd floor. VIP room 1. The woman in white pushed the door open and entered. She saw Feng Zijuan sitting beside the tea table, his face ashen. The guard stood to the side and looked at Feng Zijuan silently. In fact, this was surveillance, to prevent Feng Zijuan from leaving. The woman in white glanced at Feng Zijuan and waved her hand, you can leave. Yes. The guard respectfully replied and walked out of the VIP room, closing the door behind him. Young Master Feng, is it because my treasure pavilion is not good enough? Your face is so ugly. The woman in white walked to the tea table and sat opposite Feng Zijuan, laughing. Can you not laugh? Feng Zijuan raised his eyebrows, his anger rising. Good, good, good. The woman in white nodded and said, the people below have already told me. I don't have any objections, but I need an IOU. IOU? Feng Zijuan couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up and glared at the woman in white, saying, don't you know what kind of person I, Feng Zijuan, am? You actually want me to write an IOU? Aren't you humiliating me? Young Master Feng, please calm down. This is the rule of the Treasure Pavilion. I am just doing my job. I hope young master can understand. The woman in white smiled apologetically. No room for negotiation. Feng Zijuan raised his eyebrows. Young Master Feng, don't make it difficult for me. You know the rules of my treasure pavilion. If it was someone else, I'm afraid they wouldn't be able to step out of the treasure pavilion today. And now, I just want young master to leave an IOU. This is already giving young master a lot of face. The woman in white smiled. Feng Zijuan's face was gloomy. The woman in white said, if young master is not willing to leave an IOU, then I will have to personally go to the 9th Heaven Palace and ask for it from Elder Feng. The Elder Feng that the woman spoke of was Feng Zijuan's grandfather. You, Feng Zijun was furious. The woman in white smiled. Young master, I have already given you face. Don't push your luck. You win. Feng Zijun glared at the woman in white and returned to his seat, saying, prepare the brush and ink. The woman in white smiled and personally walked to the desk, took the brush, ink, and paper, and placed them in front of Feng Zijun. Feng Zijun grabbed the brush and was about to write. Suddenly, an 8-foot-tall, burly man in black appeared out of thin air in the VIP room. On the chest of the burly man, there was also a flame tattoo. Seeing this person, Feng Zijun was overjoyed. He immediately put down the brush in his hand and stood up. Uncle Yong. The burly man waved his hand, looked at the woman in white and smiled. Shangguan Xiu, long time no see. Yes, long time no see. Shangguan Xiu stood up and smiled. After exchanging some pleasantries, the burly man said, Old master has already heard about the 9 Suns Thunder Fire, so he specially asked me to come and deal with it. I wonder how much the 9 Suns Thunder Fire was auctioned off. Shangguan Xiu glanced at Feng Zijun and said with a smile, Elder Feng, I didn't expect you to come here personally. It seems that you really love your grandson. The price of the 9 Suns Thunder Fire is 400 million divine gems, 400 million. The burly man was stunned. He turned to look at Feng Zijun and shook his head. You are really messing around. Feng Zijun lowered his head, his face full of regret. Sigh. The burly man sighed, took out a golden card from his chest, and handed it to Shangguan Xiu, smiling, take it. Okay. Shangguan Xiu nodded, took the card, and said, come in. The door was pushed open, and the guard who had left before ran in again. Shangguan Xiu smiled, take this card to the account room and deduct 400 million divine gems. Yes. The guard took the card, turned around, and left quickly. After the guard left the VIP room, the burly man withdrew his gaze, turned to Shangguan Xiu, and said, can I have a private chat with Feng Zijun? Shangguan Xiu was surprised, and then he smiled, of course, you can have a chat. I will ask someone to send the card over later. Then he turned around and walked out. Wait. Where is the 9 Suns Thunder Fire? Feng Zijun shouted. Look at my memory, I almost forgot. Shangguan Xiu patted his head, and then waved his hand. The 9 Suns Thunder Fire appeared out of nowhere, flew to Feng Zijun, and then left. The burly man immediately went forward, closed the door, and then walked to Feng Zijun. Looking at the 9 Suns Thunder Fire, he said helplessly, 400 million divine gems for such a thing, young master. Uncle Yong doesn't want to criticize you, but you are really a spendthrift. Feng Zijun lowered his head and said guiltily, Uncle Yong, can you stop? Okay, I will stop. But you don't have to worry, someone will pay for the 9 Suns Thunder Fire for us. The burly man smiled. What do you mean? Feng Zijun was surprised. This time, I came to give you the divine gems to help you out, and also to help you get back at them. The burly man said, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Feng Zijun's eyes lit up, and he asked, what do you mean? Those who dare to go against us never have a good ending, and this time is no exception. The burly man sneered. Then what are you going to do? Feng Zijun asked. Kill him. The burly man said. Is this Grandpa's order? Feng Zijun asked. Yes. The burly man nodded and asked, do you know that person's identity? I don't know. However, since he dares to clamor with me, I think his identity should not be simple. Feng Zijun said. What does he look like? The burly man said. Feng Zijun asked, I don't know either, but Pengen knows. Okay. Go and call Pengen up, I want to know more. The burly man said. Okay. Feng Zijun nodded and was about to put away the 9 Suns Thunder Fire. But at this moment, the 9 Suns Thunder Fire disappeared without a trace. Feng Feng Zijun and the burly man's faces were suddenly filled with surprise. Immediately after, their spiritual force surged out in all directions, but they couldn't find anything in this small VIP room. Outrageous, this is really outrageous. Who dares to cause trouble under my nose? Who is it? Get out here. The burly man roared like thunder. In an instant, everyone in the treasure pavilion was alarmed. Private room number 9. With a happy smile, Qin Feiyang strode into the private room and closed the door. Hui looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyang and asked, Brother Jiang, did you encounter some good news? Brother Hua knows very well, why ask again? Qin Feiyang smiled and walked to the side of Fire Lotus, sitting on the chair with a satisfied expression. As expected. Hui shook his head and laughed. However, this kind of playboy had to be taught a good lesson. Qin Feiyang drank a mouthful of tea, turned to look at Hui, and said, Brother Hua, I also heard them talking, as if they want to harm us. Everything is as expected. Hui sighed. Qin Feiyang asked, that person called Uncle Yong, do you know who he is? Uncle Yong? Hui was taken aback, and asked, are you talking about the person who roared earlier? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. This person isn't simple. He is Grandpa Feng Zijun's last disciple, called Guiyong. His strength has also reached the level of small success Divine Lord, and he is deeply trusted by Grandpa Feng Zijun. Even Feng Zijun's parents treat him with respect. Hui said. Chapter 1955. Junior Monarch God. Fire Lotus was shocked. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Brother, it seems like we're in big trouble this time. What can they do to us without any evidence? Qin Feiyang said with a smile. That's right. Even if they can cover the sky with one hand, they won't dare to do anything to us. Hui smiled. Dong. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. The three of them turned to look at the door. Qin Feiyang laughed and said, they're so fast. Fire Lotus said, Brother, why don't we leave first? Leave? Isn't that the same as confessing? Don't be nervous. Just keep quiet. I'll deal with them. Qin Feiyang patted Fire Lotus's shoulder and said, come in. The door opened and a woman in white entered the room. It was Shangguan Qiu. Behind Shangguan Qiu, Guiyong and Feng Zijun looked gloomy. Shangguan Qiu turned to look at the two of them and said, you two wait outside. I'll ask them first. Wait? Feng Zijun raised his eyebrows and said angrily, who else could it be? Young Master Feng, do you have any evidence? There's no evidence. You're just making things up. And the three of them are guests of the treasure pavilion. I can't offend them because of your baseless guess. By the way, this is the treasure pavilion, not the 9th heaven palace. You have to follow the rules of the treasure pavilion. Shangguan Qiu said with a touch of coldness in her eyes. Feng Zijun was furious. Guiyong waved his hand and said, okay, just do as she says. We'll wait outside. As he spoke, Guiyong looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two with a touch of suspicion in his eyes. Shangguan Qiu entered the room and closed the door behind him. How dare they shut us out? That's too much. Feng Zijun was furious. He looked at Guiyong and asked in a low voice, Uncle Yong, do you remember them? Not at all. Guiyong shook his head. Feng Zijun was shocked. If even you don't know them, then aren't they even more mysterious? No. I basically know all the young people in the northern region who have some status, but I have no impression of these three people. This can only mean one thing. Guiyong smiled. What? Feng Zijun asked. Guiyong said, they are not mysterious. They are just newborn calves who are not afraid of tigers. Feng Zijun was stunned and said, you're saying that they are just three inconspicuous minor characters? That's right. Guyong nodded. Bastard, how dare you be so arrogant when you have no background? Feng Zijun suddenly grinned. Inside the private room, Shangguan Xiu looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and bowed with a smile. Shangguan Xiu, the steward of the treasure pavilion, greets young masters and young mistress. Qin Feiyang suddenly smiled and said, so it's the manager of the treasure pavilion. I don't dare to call you lord. Young master, please call me by my name. Shangguan Xiu waved his hand. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, may I know why the steward has come in person? Shangguan Xiu said, I can't say that I'm advising you. I just want to ask you a few questions. Questions? Qin Feiyang was stunned and said with a smile, please go ahead. I will tell you everything I know. May I ask if the three of you have left before? Shangguan Xiu asked. No. We have been here all this time and have never left. Qin Feiyang said. Really? Shangguan Xiu said. Of course. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shangguan Xiu said again, do the three of you know that the Nine Suns Thunder Fire was stolen from the VIP room on the 3rd floor? What? The Nine Suns Thunder Fire was stolen? Qin Feiyang and the other two stood up, their faces full of shock. Shangguan Xiu looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two. Whether it was Qin Feiyang or Hua Yi, the shocked expression on their faces was not fake at all. As for Fire Lotus, although she was wearing a mask and her expression could not be seen, there was no trace in her eyes. Looks like it's really not them. Shangguan Xiu muttered. As the steward of the treasure pavilion, she was very confident in her ability to judge people. No matter who it was, no matter how well they hid, they could not escape her eyes. But if it was not these three, who could it be? Who had the guts to steal from the treasure pavilion? Bang! At this moment, the door was kicked open, and Feng Zijun walked in angrily. Shangguan Xiu frowned and looked at Feng Zijun, saying, what do you want to do? Feng Zijun said, Shangguan Xiu, let me tell you, you won't get anything out of them. Shangguan Xiu said, then what do you think we should do? Feng Zijun glanced at Qin Feiyang and the other two and sneered, there is only one way to deal with such fanatics, torture them. How dare you? Shangguan Xiu said angrily. Shangguan Xiu, I know you have seen countless people and are very confident in your judgment. But in this world, there are many people who are good at pretending. There will be times when you are wrong. Guyong closed the door and looked at Shangguan Xiu with a smile. I say, what do you mean? Revenge? Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows and looked at Feng Zijun and Shangguan Xiu. Who are we? Who are you? Is there a need to take revenge on you for such a small matter? We are just talking about the facts. Guyong laughed, his eyes full of disdain. If Qin Feiyang hadn't personally heard the two of them discussing in private, he would have really believed this person's nonsense. You said we are talking about the facts, right? Well, let's talk about the facts now. You are so sure that we stole the Nine Suns Thunder Fire. May I ask, where is your evidence? Qin Feiyang said. Feng Zijun shouted, you were the only one who fought with me for the Nine Suns Thunder Fire in the auction house. Who else could it be? Is that how you judge? How ridiculous. I was not the only one who wanted it at the auction house. There were many others who were also fighting for the Nine Suns Thunder Fire. Based on what you said, aren't they all suspects? Qin Feiyang sneered. Feng Zijun said angrily, they did fight, but you fought fiercely, didn't you? The one who fought fiercely is the one who stole the Nine Suns Thunder Fire. What kind of logic is that? You must be stupid. Qin Feiyang said with amusement. You, Feng Zijun glared at him. Forget it, forget it. I can't be bothered to argue with an idiot who is stupid. Qin Feiyang smiled disdainfully and looked at Guyong. Sir, you must be stupid, right? Let's talk. Where was the Nine Suns Thunder Fire when it was stolen? And where were you? Feng Zijuan was about to explode with anger. You can't be bothered to argue? Who is the one arguing with whom now? Guyong also frowned and said, VIP room 1. I'm right next to you. That's right. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. What's right? Guyong was suspicious. Sheng Guanxiu also looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang looked at Sheng Guanxiu and asked, Manager, what's Guyong's cultivation level? Lower tier god of war. Sheng Guanxiu said honestly. So powerful? Qin Feiyang looked at Guyong in shock. Guyong looked proud. Qin Feiyang sneered in his heart. He continued to look at Sheng Guanxiu and asked, Manager, what's our cultivation level? Sheng Guanxiu looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and said, You and this lady are both lower tier gods of war, and this young master is a higher tier god of war. That's right. 2 lower tier gods of war and 1 higher tier god of war. Can we steal the 9 suns lightning fire in front of a lower tier divine emperor? Qin Feiyang said. That's right. Sheng Guanxiu mumbled. The difference in cultivation level was too big. Even if the 3 of them had incredible abilities, they couldn't steal the 9 suns lightning fire in front of Guyong without anyone noticing. Guyong frowned and looked at Qin Feiyang. He had an ominous feeling. A lower tier divine emperor. Such a terrifying existence. I'm afraid that even if we have the divine item of space, we can't steal the 9 suns lightning fire. Moreover, we're in the treasure hall. Even if we borrow courage from the heavens, we won't dare to cause trouble in the treasure hall. Qin Feiyang sighed. Sheng Guanxiu nodded and said, That makes sense. In your opinion, what's the trick behind this? Qin Feiyang glanced at Guyong and Feng Zijuan. He pondered for a while and asked, Manager, do you really want me to say it? Just say it. Sheng Guanxiu said. Qin Feiyang said, Okay, let me ask first. When the 9 suns lightning fire was stolen, was the manager in the VIP room? I wasn't. Sheng Guanxiu shook his head. Why not? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Sheng Guanxiu said, Because Guyong said that he wanted to talk to Feng Zijuan in private, so I left. I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said with a smile, Then I understand. Guyong, Feng Zijuan, you two are really good at scheming. What do you mean? Feng Zijuan was at a loss. Guyong's uneasiness grew stronger. Qin Feiyang looked at Feng Zijuan and said angrily, Don't you know what I mean? Previously at the auction house, I embarrassed you, and because you held a grudge in your heart, you deliberately put on this show with Guyong to frame us. Frame us? Sheng Guanxiu was stunned. After hearing this, Feng Zijuan was also stunned. When he came back to his senses, he immediately shouted, Nonsense. Nonsense? Then why did you send Sheng Guanxiu away? Qin Feiyang sneered. Send me away? Sheng Guanxiu frowned. Yes. They were sending you away. Because if you were there, they wouldn't be able to fake the scene of the 9 suns lightning fire being stolen. In fact, they faked the theft of the 9 suns lightning fire to take revenge on me. They were also using someone else to do their dirty work. Qin Feiyang said. That makes sense. The 9 suns lightning fire was stolen from the treasure pavilion, so the treasure pavilion can't escape the blame. For the sake of the treasure pavilion's reputation, you will definitely investigate to the end. Then, they will take the opportunity to instigate you to get rid of us. After Hui finished, he looked at Guyong and Feng Zijuan and sneered, What a brilliant plan, I admire it. You're slandering me. Feng Zijuan shouted angrily. Guyong was also extremely angry. He never thought that he would be the one being blamed. He looked at Sheng Guanxiu and said in a low voice, Do you believe their words? Sheng Guanxiu pondered for a moment, then looked up at Guyong and said, With your strength and status, I believe that no one here would dare to steal from you, so I have to believe it. After that, Sheng Guanxiu added, Moreover, you said before that you didn't find anything like a space divine item in the VIP room. Without a space divine item, who could sneak into the VIP room? Guyong's heart trembled. Chapter 1956. Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them and sneered. Feng Zijuan, Master Guyong, you have nothing to say now, right? Feng Zijuan was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He had come to settle accounts with the three of them, but he did not expect them to embarrass them with just a few words. Sheng Wanxiu said in a low voice, Feng Zijuan, Guyong, I don't care what you want to do, but I advise you not to drag the treasure pavilion into this. Feng Zijuan said anxiously, Sheng Wanxiu, they're just pretending to be a thief. Don't be fooled. Qin Feiyang said, you should know better than anyone who's pretending to be a thief. Feng Zijuan was so angry that he could not speak. That's enough. Guyong shouted coldly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and sneered. You're good. We admit defeat this time, but there's still time. Let's wait and see. Qin Feiyang said angrily, Manager, did you see that? They're desperate and threatening us. Sheng Wanxiu glanced at Guyong and Feng Zijuan and said, the three of them are now guests of the treasure pavilion, so I hope you can have some awareness. Don't worry. We won't do anything to them in the treasure pavilion. But it's hard to say once they leave the treasure pavilion. Feng Zijuan, let's go. Guyong smiled coldly, turned around, and slammed the door. Feng Zijuan followed behind him and said to himself, Uncle Yong, are we just going to let it go? What else do you want? If we continue, it'll only make things worse. It's my fault. I underestimated the three of them. They're so shrewd. Guyong said telepathically. After the two of them left, Sheng Wanxiu looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and said apologetically, I'm so sorry to have frightened you. No. We have to thank you, Manager. If you had stood up for us, I'm afraid we would have been killed by them today. Qin Feiyang quickly waved his hand and said gratefully. You're too kind. Sheng Wanxiu shook his head and said with a smile, then you can continue. I'll go. Take care, steward. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said. After Sheng Wanxiu left, Fire Lotus hurriedly closed the door. She patted her chest and whispered, You scared me to death. What's so scary about that? Qin Feiyang was speechless. Not everyone is like you. Fire Lotus pouted. Me? Qin Feiyang chuckled and said, Actually, the truly powerful one is Brother Hua. Brother Jiang, your words are too much for me. Throughout the entire process, I only said one sentence. You were the one who spoke the rest. If you're amazing, then Brother Jiang is the one who's amazing. Hua Yi laughed. All right, stop flattering each other. You're all the same. Fire Lotus rolled her eyes at the two. Qin Feiyang and Hua Yi looked at each other and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Fire Lotus said, Brother, we have no use for those divine crystals, should we return them to Big Brother Hua Yi? Indeed, we don't need them. Qin Feiyang smiled and took out the interspatial ring. He handed it to Hua Yi and said, Thank you. You're welcome. Hua Yi shook his head and smiled. He took the interspatial ring and crushed the IOU. Ninth Heaven Palace. In a magnificent hall. A red-haired old man sat on a throne. His aura was unfathomable. At this moment, he was looking at two people below him with anger. The two people standing below him were Guyong and Feng Zijuan. Both of them lowered their heads and trembled in fear. They didn't dare to look at the red-haired old man. Someone who could make them so afraid must be the Hall Master of Ninth Heaven Palace's Resource Hall. Good job. You used 400 million divine crystals to buy a cluster of 9 suns lightning fire. The funniest thing is that it was snatched away. Feng Zijuan, good job. I'm proud to have a descendant like you. And you, Guyong. An exalted small perfection divine lord is actually being toyed with by 3 brats who are still wet behind the ears. You really give this old man face. The red-haired old man broke the silence and laughed angrily at the two. Master, we know our mistake. Grandpa, we also know our mistake. The two shuddered and quickly knelt on the ground. What mistake did you make? It's all my fault. I didn't teach you well and caused you to be teased outside. You've embarrassed yourselves. That's right. It's all my fault. I'm ashamed. The red-haired old man smiled, but his smile was terrifying. Guyong and Guyong couldn't help but feel their hair stand. Grandpa, I'm sorry. Guyong lowered his head and said with a face full of self-blame. I'm sorry, the red-haired old man chuckled. But suddenly, he slammed his palm on the armrest of the chair and landed in front of Feng Zijuan. He slapped Feng Zijuan's face. Feng Zijuan flew out on the spot and pretended that his head was bleeding. What's the use of saying sorry? Let me tell you, this isn't a disgrace to you. It's a disgrace to this old man and your parents. Tell me, after doing such a stupid thing, how do you want this old man and your parents to face the world in the future? Face the disciples of 9 Heavens Palace? The red-haired old man blew his beard and glared. He was extremely angry. Grandpa, I was wrong. I won't do it again. Please forgive me this time. Feng Zijuan ignored the blood on his face and crawled to the red-haired old man and begged. Scram. Go and reflect on your mistakes. Without this old man's orders, you're not allowed to take half a step out of the cultivation room. The red-haired old man shouted. Yes, yes, yes. Feng Zijuan nodded and ran out. Only Guyong was left. Guyong was also extremely nervous. His forehead was sweating. The red-haired old man looked at Guyong and didn't say anything for a long time. Get up. After some time, the red-haired old man turned and walked to the throne. He sat on it and looked at Guyong. Yes. Guyong replied respectfully and looked at the red-haired old man. The red-haired old man asked, Who are those 3 people? Guyong said, Disciple doesn't know them. According to Disciple's guess, they should be people who came to Sky Dragon City for the first time. The red-haired old man said, Then it's easy. Find a chance to make them disappear. This time, there can't be any accidents. Also, don't let anyone see them. Disciple understands. Guyong nodded. The red-haired old man asked again, How is Gongzi Feng? Guyong said, He's still secretly doing things like killing people for money. But apart from that, he's quite honest. Honest? Humph. His existence is the shame of my Feng family. The red-haired old man snorted coldly. Master, forgive this disciple for offending you. Actually, compared to Feng Zijuan, Gongzi Feng's character and personality are much better. Guyong said. Of course this old man knows. But there's no other way. He can only blame himself for being an illegitimate child. My Feng family can't afford to lose face like this. The red-haired old man said. Sigh. Guyong couldn't help but sigh. The red-haired old man said, In short, his identity as an illegitimate child can't be revealed. Especially his mother's identity, no one can know about it. Yes. Guyong nodded. Go. The red-haired old man waved his hand. This disciple will take his leave. Guyong bowed respectfully and turned around to leave. Also in 9 Heaven Palace, in a training room. A purple-clothed youth stood in the training room with a shocked expression. This person was Gongzi Feng. In the air in front of Gongzi Feng, there were 2 figures. They were the 2 perfect war god-level strong men. A moment later, Gongzi Feng finally regained his senses. Looking at the 2 men, he asked, Are you sure? Of course. This matter has already spread throughout Sky Dragon City. The 2 men nodded. Haha, Gongzi Feng raised his head and laughed. I really didn't expect. my big brother to make such a big mistake. This is great, this is great. Yes. Feng Zijuan made such a big mistake, your grandfather Feng Yuan won't let him off easily this time. The two men said. Sigh. Hearing this, Gongzi Feng let out a long sigh. Gongzi, why are you sighing? The two men didn't understand. Although Feng Zijuan made a mistake and embarrassed the Feng family, he is different from me. If it were me this time, I would definitely be dead. But Feng Zijuan, that old bastard, at most, he would be scolded a few times and face the wall for a few days. Gongzi Feng shook his head. Gongzi, the two men looked at Gongzi Feng with pity in their eyes. All right, you don't have to look at me with such pitiful eyes. I still believe that gold will shine sooner or later. Gongzi Feng smiled. Yes. The two men nodded. Gongzi Feng asked, have you seen the person who tricked Feng Zijuan? No. They were in the private room and didn't see each other. Maybe only Sheng Guanqiu saw them. The two men said. Gongzi Feng pondered for a while and said, find a chance to meet them. Meet them for what? The two men were suspicious. Gongzi Feng smiled and said, haven't you heard of this saying? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I see. But won't it be a little abrupt for us to suddenly meet them? The two men frowned. Find a reason, then it won't be abrupt. Gongzi Feng said. What reason? The two men asked. I know that old bastard's character. This time, he has embarrassed Feng Zijuan in public. He will definitely not let it go. Gongzi Feng sneered. One of the men said, Gongzi, do you mean that Feng Zijuan will find a chance to get rid of them? That's right. Go immediately, don't miss the opportunity, and be friendly. Gongzi Feng reminded. We are now in the alley near the treasure pavilion. We won't miss it. The two men laughed. Very good. I will also go and show some concern for Feng Zijuan and see how miserable he is now. Gongzi Feng smiled mockingly, turned off the image crystal, got up, and strode out of the cultivation room. Private room number 9. Qin Feiyang and Hui Yi were drinking tea and chatting while paying attention to the auction outside. They were like two old friends who hadn't seen each other for many years, chatting happily. Brother Jiang, I don't think there are any good things left. Why don't we change places and have a few more drinks? Hui Yi suggested. I have the same idea, but I want to wait a little longer. Qin Feiyang smiled. They had the 9 suns thunder fire and the ghost flower. They only lacked the ghost wood and the death fruit. If there was an auction later, wouldn't they miss it? Okay. Hui Yi nodded and smiled. Chapter 1957. Dong Dong. Just as Qin Feiyang and Hui Yi finished their conversation, another series of knocks came from the door. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other, a trace of suspicion creeping into their eyes. Could it be Feng Zijuan again? Come in. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly as he smiled faintly. 2 brawny men pushed the door open and entered. Qin Feiyang was stunned. How could it be these two? Hui Yi transmitted his voice. Brother Jiang knows them? These two are young noble Feng subordinates. Qin Feiyang thought to himself. The 2 brawny men entered the room and closed the door. Looking at the 3, they bowed. Greetings, young noble and young Mississippi, Qin Feiyang asked suspiciously. You two are? Although he knew these two, they did not know him, because at that time, he was using Wang Dachuan's identity. One of the brawny men said, I am Mo Shan, this is my younger brother, Mo Yun, we are young noble Feng subordinates. Young noble Feng subordinates? Qin Feiyang pretended to be surprised and looked at the two, asking, You two are brothers? Yes. The two nodded. Qin Feiyang sized up the 2 of them. He suddenly frowned and said, Are you two here to help Feng Zijuan fight against injustice? No, no, no. The two quickly waved their hands. Don't play with me. Who in Sky Dragon City doesn't know that young noble Feng is Feng Zijuan's younger brother? Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. Young noble misunderstood. The two hurriedly said, looking anxious. Misunderstood? Then why don't you tell me why you're here? Qin Feiyang said. Mo Shan said, we are here to remind the three of you that Feng Yuan might harm the three of you, please be careful. Who is Feng Yuan? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Mo Shan said, Feng Yuan is Feng Zijuan's grandfather. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded in realization and said suspiciously, then I'm puzzled. Feng Yuan is Feng Zijuan's grandfather, so naturally, he is also Gong Zifeng's grandfather. As Gong Zifeng's subordinates, why did you come here to inform him? What are you playing at? It's not convenient for us to talk about the details. In short, we are not your enemies. Goodbye. As soon as Mo Shan finished speaking, he turned around and left in quick steps. After watching the two of them leave, Hui turned to Qin Feiyang and frowned. Strange, what is this young noble Feng trying to do? Brother Hua, you might not know this, but Gongzi Feng is actually an illegitimate son. Usually, whether it's his big brother, big sister, or his grandfather, they don't like him. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. What? He's an illegitimate child. Hui was stunned. Qin Feiyang looked at Hui's expression and smiled, even Brother Hua doesn't know. It seems this matter is a secret. How unexpected. Hui shook his head. Time flew by, and night fell. The auction finally ended. However, what Qin Feiyang and Mo Shan wanted did not appear. Although they were mentally prepared, the two of them were still disappointed. Let's go. Qin Feiyang said as he stood up. The three of them left the treasure pavilion. At night, Sky Dragon City was even more lively. This was especially true in those brothels, where the sounds of orioles and swallows could be heard, and people could drink and sing. At the same time as the three of them left the treasure pavilion, there was a black shadow that had been hiding in the shadows the entire time, following them. Hui smiled. Brother Jiang, do you know which restaurant is the most famous in Sky Dragon City? I don't know. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Jade Zither Restaurant. Hui said. Is it very interesting? Qin Feiyang was curious. Of course. There is a fundamental difference between the Jade Zither restaurant and other restaurants. The other restaurants are usually filled with romance and extravagance. But this Jade Zither restaurant is an elegant and quiet place. Hui smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled. For Brother Hua to praise it like that, it must be extraordinary. I really want to go take a look. Hui said, okay, I'll lead the way. You treat. Qin Feiyang shook his head and laughed. Brother, something's wrong. Suddenly, Huolian glanced at a dark alley and said in a low voice. Qin Feiyang smiled, you're a bit slow to realize it now. Fire Lotus was stunned. She looked at Qin Feiyang and Hui and found that the two of them were smiling. She asked in astonishment, you guys have already, the moment we left the treasure pavilion, I already noticed that someone was following us. It's just that I didn't say anything. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. This person must be Feng Yuan's lackey. It seems that Mo Shan and Hui are right. This Feng Yuan won't let this go. Hui shook his head and sighed. Although Feng Yuan's people wouldn't dare to make a move against them in public, as long as they left Sky Dragon City, they would definitely fall into danger. It would be a lie to say that he didn't have a headache after getting into such a big trouble. Hui sent a sound transmission. Brother Jiang, I want to ask, how do you plan to deal with this matter? Different situations call for different actions. Qin Feiyang laughed, without the slightest bit of worry on his face. Different situations call for different actions. Compared to Brother Jiang's temperament, I'm really lacking. Hui laughed. The Jade Zither restaurant was also located in the center of Sky Dragon City. It was only about a dozen miles away from the Treasure Pavilion. It was an antique building. Under Huiyi's lead, the three of them quickly arrived at the entrance of the Jade Zither restaurant. Before they entered, they could already hear the melodious sound of the zither. "The three of you, please come in." A woman in classical attire welcomed them with a smile on her face, giving off a comfortable and intimate feeling. The three of them stepped into the Jade Zither restaurant. The layout and decoration of this place was also unique. There were no independent rooms from the first floor to the fifth floor. Instead, there were rows of private seats. On both sides of the corridor, there were pots of white flowers at intervals, emitting a fragrance that assailed the nostrils. Other than that, there were no gorgeous decorations, nor was there the slightest bit of extravagance. Everything seemed simple. The 6th to 10th floors were places to rest and sleep. Huiyi said in a low voice, "Brother Jiang, there is a rule in the Jade Zither restaurant. I have to tell you in advance that you are not allowed to drink, cause trouble, or fight." And Qin Feiyang nodded and looked around. There were more than 1,000 private seats on the first floor to the 5th floor. But at this moment, it was almost full. But even so, compared to the clamor of other restaurants, this place was very quiet. Other than the sound of the zither reverberating in the ears, it was difficult to hear any other noise. Everyone deliberately lowered their voices when they spoke. And the people here were basically young men and women. Qin Feiyang even saw many disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace. Qin Feiyang suspiciously said, "Brother Hua, why do I feel like this is a place to talk about love? Brother Jiang has good eyesight." Huiyi laughed in a low voice. His laughter was very wretched. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes. But such a quiet place was indeed suitable for young people to talk about love. Wait. Why did he say young people? Right now, wasn't he also a young man in his prime? Under the guidance of the woman in classical attire, the three of them went up to the 4th floor and walked to a private seat leaning against the railing. From here, they could clearly see the situation on the 1st floor below. Qin Feiyang and Huiyi sat opposite each other. Fire Lotus sat next to Qin Feiyang. Soon, a waiter brought wine and food. Qin Feiyang and Huiyi were drinking wine when they heard the sound of the zither. The beautiful sound of the zither was like flowing water, neither fast nor slow. It made one's heart involuntarily calm down. Who is this person playing the zither? Fire Lotus suspiciously poked her head out and looked at the 10th floor above. The sound of the zither came from a room on the 10th floor. But the door was closed, so they couldn't see the person playing the zither. This person playing the zither is the owner of the Jade Zither Pavilion. But she has another identity, and this identity is very scary. Huiyi smiled mysteriously. Fire Lotus helplessly said, "Brother Huiyi, can you not keep us in suspense? Have to maintain a little mystery, otherwise there won't be any surprises." Huiyi smiled. Fire Lotus was quite depressed. Qin Feiyang said, "Speaking of playing the zither, I know someone. Her zither music is not worse than the owner of the Jade Zither Pavilion." Huiyi was surprised and asked curiously, "Who?" "An elder of mine. In terms of seniority, she can be considered a great-grandmother," Qin Feiyang said. The person he was talking about was naturally Qin Rushuang. When Qin Rushuang was in the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, she attracted the admiration of countless young talents. Great-grandmother level? Brother Jiang, are you joking? How can an old woman be compared to the owner of the Jade Zither Pavilion? Huiyi said unhappily. Old woman? Qin Feiyang's face twitched. At the same time, in the ancient castle, Qin Rushuang opened her eyes, her beautiful face full of anger. He actually called her an old woman? How preposterous. Fire Lotus also covered her mouth at the side. What? Did I say something wrong? Huiyi looked at the two suspiciously. No, no. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. Just as he finished speaking, Qin Feiyang seemed to have noticed something and looked down at the door on the first floor. Fire Lotus and Hui Yi also looked down and saw a 25 or 26-year-old black-clothed youth walking into the first floor of the hall. It should be him, Hui Yi murmured. Qin Feiyang nodded. The black-clothed youth's cultivation was not ordinary. He was a greater tier war god. After entering the hall, the black-clothed youth looked around with an expressionless face, then found a private room on the first floor and drank silently. However, his eyes would occasionally glance at Qin Feiyang and the other two. Fire Lotus's eyes flashed coldly and said, "Although it's not a threat to us now, it doesn't feel good to be watched like this. No rush." Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and asked Hui Yi, "Brother Hua, how do you usually earn soul stones?" Soul stones? Hui Yi was stunned. He picked up his wine cup and drank it in one gulp, then sighed. "It's not that easy to earn soul stones." "Why do you say that?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "You saw it too. Even the treasure pavilion uses divine crystals to trade, so it's very difficult to earn soul stones," Hui Yi said. Qin Feiyang frowned. "There must be a way, right? With enough soul stones, everyone's strength would be able to increase quickly. So no matter what, they had to get soul stones. Soul stones are priceless. Even if there are, no one will sell them. Take the treasure pavilion for example. As far as I know, not only do they have soul stones, but they also have soul veins. But they don't use soul stones to trade. Unless there's some treasure that they value," Hui Yi said. Literature Museum. You're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.